are on OpenView's audio bouquet. Channel 628.
It is that time to rise and shine with us, Africa. Good morning to you. We're broadcasting live from Johannesburg in South Africa as Channel Africa. From the African perspective, we'll be bringing you news and current affairs for the next 3 hours. My name is Asanda, Beda. Let's start you off with our news update. Here's Dwalani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News, independent and impartial.
From an African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says a new Angola-mediated ceasefire with the M23 group will start today. The agreement is intended to bring an immediate halt to hostilities in the east, where communities have borne the brunt of recurring clashes. Speaking after the 39th ordinary session of the Assembly of the African Union at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, Kenyatta has indicated that mediation efforts are beginning to take shape and that discussions among the parties have been constructive.
We are making good headway. The team is working well. We're looking forward to future meetings where we hope to consolidate positions and begin the actual work on the ground to see that the people of DRC get the peace and stability that they deserve.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission Cases Inquiry has heard a scathing attack on South Africa's former President Thabo Mbeki on the fourth day of public hearings at the TRC Cases Inquiry in Newtown in Johannesburg. Lukhanyo Gxalatha, son of Fort Gxalatha, who was part of the Cradock Four murdered by the apartheid state in 1985, has laid the blame for the denial of justice squarely on Mbeki's door. Gxalatha says that the TRC's final report, referring 300 cases, the National Prosecuting Authority for Investigation and Prosecution, was handed to Mbeki in 2003. Mbeki has in recent years denied leaning on the NPA to stall progress on the TRC cases. Gxalatha says the former president had 2 terms of office from 1999 to 2008 to do justice to those who were on the receiving end of the apartheid-era human rights violations.
Now he issues a statement and he says the NPA must demonstrate enough integrity by apologizing for not processing the TRC cases rather than engage in dishonorable behavior of trying to hide behind a fig leaf with nothing more than pure fabrication. Here, former President Thabo Mbeki insults our intelligence. He says the NPA, they must demonstrate enough integrity. What about integrity on his half? How about him apologizing to us for the failures of his administrations to process TRC cases? He says the NPA is engaging in dishonorable behavior. Well, I suppose his behavior was quite honorable. Yet here I sit without justice for my father.
Officials in Madagascar say at least 59 people have died after Cyclone Gezani struck the island country last week. The Disaster Management Office says it's assessing the impact of the second tropical storm to hit Madagascar this year. The cyclone displaced over 16,000 people. 15 people remain missing. The National Bureau for Risk says 804 people have been left injured and over 400,000 have been classified as affected by the disaster. Gezani barreled through the country just 10 days after tropical cyclone Fatia killed 14 people and displaced thousands. Nigeria says a growing number of its citizens are being illegally recruited to fight wars abroad. The Foreign Ministry warned Nigerians against accepting military service contracts with foreign powers. It says recruitment tactics often include offers of high salaries and fast-tracked citizenship. The BBC's Makochi Okafor has the story.
Officials say some Nigerians were lured with promises of jobs or education but ended up fighting for Russia with little training. Earlier this week, Ukrainian officials said they had found the bodies of 2 Nigerian men who had signed up to fight alongside Russian forces. They had been killed last November on the front lines in Luhansk. Over 1,400 Africans from 36 countries are believed to be fighting alongside Russian troops in Ukraine.
And finally, Arab countries including Egypt, Jordan and Qatar have condemned Israeli plans to push forward the registration of parts of the occupied West Bank as Israeli state land. The move will pave the way for further settlement expansion in the Palestinian territory. Decades-old regulations barring non-Muslims from buying land in the West Bank will no longer apply. The BBC's Yolandi Nell has the details.
This new Israeli government move will allow large swathes of land in the West Bank to be registered officially for the the first time since Israel captured the territory from Jordan in the 1967 war and occupied it. Israel's foreign ministry is defending the step as an administrative move that will bring order. However, Israeli ministers have made clear that their aim is to deepen Israeli control over the land. The Palestinian Authority has called for international intervention to prevent what it called the de facto beginning of the annexation process and the undermining of the foundations of the Palestinian state.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, CAF will today host the CAF Inter-Club Competition quarter-final draw, while Australia on the brink of elimination as Asanda sends Sri Lanka into the Super 8s of the T20 World Cup. I'll tell you how they did it at 6:30.
From Africa's capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
All right, and we are together for the next 3 hours. Thank you for making us your choice of news and current affairs from the African perspective. This is Channel Africa. The show is Rise and Shine. My name is Asanda Beda. A very good morning to you. Connect with us on channelafrica.co.za. You can also connect on the SABC Plus app via mobile phones. You can find us on DSTV Audio Bouquet, channel 802. And of course, we are live streaming on YouTube. Channel Africa 1 is our handle. That same handle goes across the other social media platforms. We are literally everywhere. So we welcome your views and questions about our show. So coming up, we go to Kenya. And in that country, opposition leaders Rigathi Gachagua of the Democracy for Citizens Party and Kalonzo Musyoka of the Wiper Patriotic Party, they've announced a major demonstration at the offices of the country's police chief this Friday. The leaders are accusing top government officials, including Interior Minister there and Principal Secretary, of ignoring their complaints. We'll find out more about that story. Also, we go to Mozambique, where the Mozambican Association of United Health Workers has threatened to bring health services in the country to a collapse unless the government agrees to pay them the end-of-year bonus. They want the full bonus. The government is saying they're only able to afford 40% of that right now and will have to pay the rest later. But that is not satisfactory then to those health workers. Would be quite a crucial time now, as they are also battling a cyclone in the country with health efforts being already strained. So we'll find out about that story as well. We'll be speaking to a president of that association, the Mozambican Association of United Health Workers. Those stories and more are coming up, of course, in this hour of Rise and Shine, and throughout the show we'll have others. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za.
So after the 6 a.m. news on Rise and Shine, we bring you a segment of our show we call the Africa Roundup. It's a list of news compiled by our team of researchers and reporters and editors to make sure that you get in the know of what you could have missed in the news space. It also serves as what one can expect to develop in news in the new day and maybe the rest of the week. And today's Africa Roundup starts in Kenya, where opposition leaders Rigathi Gachagua of the Democracy for the Citizens Party and Kalonzo Musyoka of the Wiper Patriotic Party have announced a major demonstration at the offices of the country's police chief, Douglas Kanja, this Friday. The leaders accused top government officials, including Interior Minister Kipchumba Murkomen and Principal Secretary Raymond Omolo, of ignoring their complaints and are calling on supporters to join in large numbers to protest what they say is a systemic disruption of the political rallies.
The IG and the people under him must be held to account by the people of Kenya. And the police themselves are complaining about harassment and being ordered to do wrong things. They are really complaining that they find it very unprofessional to be accompanying goons to attack Kenyans. They find it very unprofessional that they are being forced to attack civilians in meetings when they have not been provoked, as happened yesterday in Kengela.
And when we come, we expect none other than IG Kanja himself to be here to address the concerns we have raised. If he does not appear, we will still keep coming here every week until we hold accountable all those officers who have perpetuated these gross violations of human rights.
At least 30 people were killed and homes and shops set on fire when armed assailants on motorbikes raided 3 villages in northwest Nigeria's Niger State. The attacks in the Borgu local government area near the border with Benin come amid a rising wave of violence blamed on so-called bandits who have carried out deadly raids, kidnappings for ransom, and forced thousands to flee their communities across northern Nigeria.
They slaughtered 6 people like animals here alone. In Konkozo, they followed people house to house, slaughtering them. While some were shot with a gun, others were caught and hit with a stone to their heads until it broke and they died, because the town is rocky.
Namibia has unveiled a new satellite ground data receiving station built with support from China, marking a major step toward the country's science and technology development. The facility will allow Namibia to receive real-time satellite data, boosting evidence-based decision-making across key economic sectors. Prime Minister Elijah Ngurare has more.
The official handover of the satellite ground data receiving station represents a concrete step towards realizing our national development objectives and our long-term industrialization agenda. This agenda is driven by knowledge, innovation, and modern technologies supported by state-of-the-art infrastructure. On behalf of the government and the people of Namibia, I express our sincere gratitude to the government of the People's Republic of China for the generous support provided through the construction of this satellite ground data receiving station.
The World Bank has committed $400 million to Lesotho, supporting initiatives in inclusive growth, human capital development, and job creation. Political stability in the country has also been a key factor attracting investors. Rapelang Khatebe has more from Maseru.
This is the first World Bank Group Day to be convened in Lesotho. In this event, the bank aims to strengthen collaborations with local stakeholders, including those in agriculture, health, and even in transport infrastructure. The government says the partnership is already bearing fruits.
We have people who started with 5,000. The last report I had, there was somebody who has made about 80,000 turnover within a year. 4 or 5,000. We have some who have made 70 and 50. I think the highest I saw was that one of 80. And that's what we are doing, trying to show people how to grow from. And imagine if we can have everyone growing from 5,000 and becoming an entrepreneur. The last part I'm trying to say to you, give us more money, we will use it.
South Africa's largest food redistribution non-profit, Food Forward SA Foundation, says urgent action is needed as millions of households face food insecurity. A survey with the University of Cape Town found 7 out of 10 households struggle to get enough to eat, and nearly 1 in 4 go a whole day without food. Andy Duplessis of Food Forward SA has more.
We can see clearly which are the hotspots: Limpopo, Eastern Cape, the Northwest, Mpumalanga. Those are the hotspots. And we can see that children are the worst affected in those households. Parents are finding it increasingly difficult to explain to children that there's only a little food to eat, or tonight you have to go without food. The research shows two drivers. The first is inequality, gross inequality, historical inequality. The second is high unemployment. The third reason is food prices are just going through the roof, and affordability is a major deterrent as to why people just can't get food, access to food in their household. So while the research shows that around 18 million people are food insecure, our view is closer to 25 million people that are food insecure across South Africa.
At 6:15 Central African Time, we wrap up our Roundup. Africa Roundup will return tomorrow after the 6 a.m. news right here on Rise and Shine. Coming up, we zoom into the East African region of our continent, touching on some stories, touched maybe part of them on the Africa Roundup, but all focus goes to the East African region with our analyst who joins us on Tuesdays, Dennis Peru.
Madapiri Bazoshitika. Madapiri Bazoshitika.
Madotolo oposa 1,500 amene amagwira ntchito yaulere mu zipatala zaboma mu dziko la Zambia azanyanyala ntchito lachisanu sabata yammawa ndipo Daniel Shabanda kutambasula nkhaniyi.
Madotolo oposa 1,500 amene amagwira ntchito mopanda malipiro apamwezi dziko la Zambia akuyembekezera kuyamba kunyanyala ntchito. Ichi ndi chifukwa chakuti boma lalephera walemba ntchito monga mmene lidawalonjezera. Channel Africa News yalankhulana ndi mkulu wa bungwe la madotolo la Resident Doctors Association of Zambia, Dr. Paul Chiwe. Akugomeza kuti madotolo ambiri amene akugwira ntchito mu zipatala zaboma akugwira ntchito yaulere ndipo ali ndi chiyembekezo chakuti tsiku lina adzalembedwa ntchito ndi boma.
Zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi Madapiri.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's zoom into what's happening in the East African region of our continent as far as news are concerned, and we take a look at some of these stories with our journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, who joins us as our regular analyst on Tuesdays, Dennis Peru. Dennis, good morning to you. How are you on this Tuesday?
Good morning, Asanda. I'm good. Hope you are well.
Well, thank you very much. We start with your home country today on our East Africa Wrap. Kenya, there is a strike there in a major airline in the country. What are the grievances of the workers? Why are they on strike?
Thank you so much, Asanda. Of course, we are now experiencing flight delays that are departing from the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, due to the ongoing strike by the Kenya Aviation Workers Union. And the disruption stems from a labor dispute between Kenya Aviation Workers Union and the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, KCAA. And KAU announced that its members will down their tools on Monday following a 7-day strike notice issued by KCAA. And of course, the grievances that now arises from the ongoing bargaining that there are some of the demands that their employer has not met, and some are poor working condition, and to a point the officials were saying that their members are living in a pathetic conditions. And the major airlines that include the Kenya's national carrier, the Kenya Airways, have informed passengers of flight disruption at JKIA from February 16th. And Asanda, and in a statement on Monday, the carrier noted that the industrial action has affected some departure and arrivals, and they have been advising passengers to expect a schedule adjustment and delays.
Is it both domestic and international flights that are affected?
Of course, yes. Both domestic and international passengers have been affected, and the carrier has also advised passengers to check flight status before traveling to the airport. I live just nearby the airport, and I have seen, the commotion, traffic, and NALAP along the way towards the airport, where passengers were turning back from the airport after realizing that their flight delays.
So, as you mentioned, one of the main unions behind the workers who are on strike did issue a 7-day notice to say they will strike. They didn't just, one day decide they're not showing up for work on Monday, as you said. Was there a response then from that notice from authorities? And if they didn't respond, why did they not?
Yes, Asanda. There was a 7-day notice, and I remember they even the authorities went to court to see whether they can stop the strike, and there was an injunction by the court allowing the workers to proceed to work, and then their representatives will instead continue with the discussion. But they went against the court orders, and that is what we are now seeing now.
All right, let's go to Madagascar, where Cyclone Gezani has killed at least 35 people there. What are the major challenges then in terms of reaching those who are still looking for assistance, who are alive? Because one can imagine that roads are probably damaged.
Yes, Asanda, Madagascar has been experiencing, the Gezani cyclone that made a landfall on Tuesday, hitting the highlands, a main port that is towards Semina. Madagascar's disaster management office said there was a total chaos, reporting that houses collapsed in the impact zone where the bodies were found, and the neighborhoods were plunged into darkness as power line snapped, while trees were uprooted and roofs ripped off. As as of 250 people are affected or displaced. This is according to the Environment Minister, Mark Fortune Antonirina, who told BBC on Thursday. And there are huge challenges that include disruption to food supply chain, to the fuel transport, and of course we are seeing medical access, because most of the major roads are cut. And Gezani is the second cyclone to hit Madagascar this year. This comes 10 days after the tropical cyclone Fortia killed 14 and it displaced over 30,000 people. This is according to the UN humanitarian officer. And Asanda, remember, the island rulers are now pleading for the international support. And remember, the leaders who just came to power in a few months ago after a deadly protest. So they are trying to face these challenges and ensure that the country is now stable. And according to the National Office of Risk and Disaster Management, said many were killed when houses collapsed. A cyclone Gezani hit to Asmina, which is now the country's second largest city, with wind reaching up to 250 kilometers per hour. That is very huge.
Yeah, and I mean, it is cyclone season for the areas of Madagascar and Mozambique. So one hopes that contingency plans can be put in place that are more effective moving forward, because this is not something that's going to end anytime soon. Let's go to Malawi now, Dennis. The country is aiming to drop the inflation rate to below 21% this year. Malawi is funding reliant. So how realistic is this goal? Can they reach it?
Yes, Peter Mutharika, when he came to power, of course, he found uh, 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 um, a very low, and the country was really struggling economically. And one of the promises was to bring the inflation down. This is a donor-dependent South African nation that has struggled to rein in inflation, which now currently stands at 26% year on year, and has been above 20% since the middle of 2022. And when Mutharika returned to power in September, of course, one of his manifestos were to ensure that the Malawi economy is revived, and after years of crisis and crippling foreign exchange shortages have disrupted imports of fuel, fertilizer, and other essential goods. And he was speaking to the lawmakers and saying that his goal is to ensure that the economy grows from 3.8% in 2026 to up to 4.9% in 2027, up from 2.7% rate. He said his administration inherited from the previous regime. And of course, Malawi is trying to negotiate a new support program from the International Monetary Fund, restructure its debt, and boost dwindling international reserves. And Mutharika also added that a foreign exchange reserve remained below 3 months import cover, and a level widely recommended as a buffer against potential stocks. So let's see, Asanda, whether Peter Mutharika will revive the economy. Remember, Malawi is one of the poorest countries in the world.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll see how that one goes. South Africa, the next story we're looking at now, they've called for the African Union leaders to force a ceasefire in South Sudan. Can you force a ceasefire, especially looking at the history and where we come from with South Sudan? Is this possible?
Yes, it is very much possible. And we've seen Cyril Ramaphosa during that ninth meeting, the AU summit in Ethiopia, where he delivered the closing remarks at the Africa Union ad hoc high-level committee for South Sudan plus summit held in Ethiopia. And the summit convened the sideline of the 39th ordinary session of the AU Assembly Head of States and government in Addis Ababa. And some of the recommendations from the sideline were to ensure that there is a ceasefire and all hostilities must be brought to an end. And there was also to be a release of all political detainees, and should also include people like the Vice President Riek Machar, who is now going through various processes of legal nature. We are also seeing calls to have a free and fair election where Cyril Ramaphosa said that the election must go on and not be postponed. There also should be a coordination of the efforts to work through the IGAD secretariat as well as the C5, and of course the chair of the commission should work together with the 3 IGAD head of state, which composed of the sitting presidents, who will work with the C5 and will have an oversight role to monitor and support the implementation of these processes in South Sudan. Asanda, Cyril Ramaphosa is a champion of peace, and we saw when Kenya had the post-election violence in 2007, he was one of the mediators. And let's see whether they will push and ensure that, of course, one of the recommendations, if they passes, one of them being election must be held in 2026, that is around December.
Right, let's leave it there for today, Dennis, for our East Africa wrap. We'll catch up with you next week, Tuesday. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Dennis Peru is journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, giving us our East Africa wrap. And that's where we'll end that chat for now. Let's get our news headlines. It's 6:30 Central African time. Here's Jolani Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says a new Angolan-mediated ceasefire with the M23 group will start today. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission Cases Inquiry has heard a scathing attack on South Africa's former President Thabo Mbeki on the fourth day of public hearings at the TRC Cases Inquiry in Newtown in Johannesburg. And finally, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has met the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Budapest. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now catch you up with what's happening in the world of sports, and we say good morning to Musibudi Makura for that update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. A very good morning indeed from the sports desk. We'll start here. So the Confederation of African Football will conduct the quarterfinal draws for both the Total Energies CAF Champions League as well as the CAF Confederation Cup 2025-2026 at the Egyptian Football Association headquarters in Cairo, Egypt this afternoon. The draw will be live on the CAF's official YouTube channel as well as CAF TV. Now, both draws will now determine the quarterfinal pairings, as well as the route to the finals in both competitions as Africa's leading clubs move into the decisive knockout phase of the 2025-2026 season. So these teams have qualified for the quarterfinals of the CAF Confederation Cup, and these includes USM Alger of Algeria, Olympique de Safi of Morocco, Wydad Casablanca of Morocco, Menema FC of the DRC, CR Belouizdad of Algeria, Otto Ador of Congo, Zamalek of Egypt, as well as Al Masry also from Egypt. Meanwhile, the teams that have qualified for the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League include Pyramids FC of Egypt. They are, of course, the defending champions of the CAF Champions League. Rasan Bakan of Morocco, Al Ali of Egypt, FAR Rabat of Morocco, Al Hilal Omdurman of Sudan, Mamelodi Sundowns from South Africa, Stade Milan of Mali, as well as Espérance Sportive de Tunis of Tunisia. On to some cricket news now. Australia's hopes of reaching the Super 8 stages of the T20 World Cup are all but over after Sri Lanka's Pathum Nasaka hit a brilliant unbeaten 100 to condemn them to an 8-wicket defeat in Palake yesterday. So stunned by Zimbabwe in their second outing last Friday. Australia needed to win to keep their qualification fate in their own hands, but it was the Sri Lankan side who marched into the next round of the ongoing T20 World Cup. For Australia to sneak through as the second place team from their group, they need Zimbabwe to lose both their remaining matches against Ireland as well as Sri Lanka and then defeat Oman themselves, which would then bring the net run rate into play. Let's hear from Australian captain Mitchell Marsh following their defeat from yesterday.
Oh mate, yeah, pretty shattered group. Disappointing to lose that game, but yeah, fair play to Sri Lanka. So the way they batted, they outplayed us, but the boys are hurting. Yeah, look, I think it was probably just execution tonight. That full strength batting lineup's got some of the best players to spin in Australia, well, the best players to spin in Australia. So it was probably more just execution tonight, and I thought Sri Lanka pulled it back beautifully. We were a few short after the start that we got. We probably knew that going into the second innings, but we had great belief that we could get the job done, but yeah, we were outplayed.
On to tennis news now. The world number 2 Jannik Sinner enjoyed a comfortable victory in his first match since losing to Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open semi-finals. Now the Italian claimed a straight sets victory over Czech Republic's Tomáš Mahaj at the Qatar Open in Doha on Monday. Sinner won that match 6-1 and 6-4, wrapping up the first set in just 27 minutes. Now Sinner will face Australia's Alexei Popyrin in the last 16, with the world number 53 having beaten local card Murabak Sana Zaid 6-love and 6-2. Meanwhile, the world number 11 Daniil Medvedev of Russia claimed a straight sets win as well, beating China's Xinjiang Shang 6-4 and 6-2. The 6th seed Jakub Minsk is also through to the last 16, having come from behind to beat Great Britain's Jan Konietzki. After losing the first set tie-break to the world number 124, the Czech number 1 recovered to win that tie 6-7, 6-2 and 6-4. Meanwhile, British number 1 Emma Raducanu has been knocked out of the Dubai Tennis Championships in the first round. She recovered from a set as well as a breakdown against Antonia Ruzic to force a decider, but the Croatian prevailed, winning that tie 6-1, 5-7 and 6-2. Ruzic is ranked 67th in the world and was one of the 7 lucky losers from qualifying for the main draw after several players pulled out due to injury, illness or schedule change. Now, Raducanu's initial opponent, Elisabetta Carciretto, was ruled out with a thigh problem, and Ruzic won that first set in a 30 minutes, having twice broken Raducanu. Now, the world number 25 then sought medical attention, just as she did last week at the Qatar Open, where she had to retire from her first round match. The time is 6:36 a.m. Central African Time. It concludes your first sporting update this morning on Channel Africa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Right, we're going to be looking at a story going to the 39th African Union Summit of Heads of State and Government. They've wrapped up their gathering there in Ethiopia, and some of the outcomes then are being discussed in terms of the strategic priorities, the reports from assembly committees on Agenda 2063 and others. So we'll find out what the African Union Commission chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf had said in terms of what's come out of the discussions there.
Téléchargez l'application Channel Africa sur votre Play Store ou Apple Store afin de pouvoir suivre toutes nos émissions en direct de là où vous vous trouvez. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has connected the continent. Celebrate the journey. Celebrate the African perspective.
And let's catch you up from the world of business for the first time on this Tuesday morning. We say good morning to Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. And your business news this hour. Liberia Mines Minister Manetoko Tingben says he expects the country's iron ore output to triple to around 30 million metric tons this year, driven by ArcelorMittal Liberia's planned ramp-up and fresh volumes from new and revived projects. Now, the West African country produced about 10 million tons in 2025, almost all of it from AML, its main mining operator. Luxembourg-based ArcelorMittal is investing in expanding its Liberian operations and could buy a new concentrator and major rail and port upgrades. The company said last month that it planned to ship 20 million tons of iron ore from Liberia in 2026 from historic levels of around 5 million tons per annum. Nigeria's annual inflation rate slowed slightly to 15.10% in January from 15.15% in December. The country's statistics office says this marks the 10th straight monthly decline in the country's inflation rate. The data could encourage the central bank to cut interest rates next week when it is scheduled to announce its first monetary policy decision of 2026. At the previous release, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, adopted a revamped methodology that it said better reflects real-world prices. The methodology uses a 12-month reference period where the average consumer price index for the 12 months of 2024 is equated to 100, whereas previously the agency used a single-month reference period with December 2024 set to 100. Frustrated workers of the embattled Northwest Transport Investment (NTI) and South Africa's Northwest Province say the ongoing non-payment of salaries has crippled many workers, while others have succumbed to psychological and physical illness. The enraged workers, including bus drivers, mechanics and cleaners, blockaded the entrance of the Northwest Provincial Legislator in Mahikeng in their demand for outstanding salaries. Frustrated NTI employees have appealed for the payment of outstanding salaries.
It's been a very, very tough 4 years for each and every employee of NTI because some of the people have lost their cars, they've lost their houses, some have even committed suicide due to the situation that we find ourselves in.
The South African Cultural Observatory, SACO, has called for informed policy decisions around the welfare of people in creative sectors. Hundreds of film and television workers marched outside Parliament last month under the banner Save SA Film Jobs to protest the declining employment and funding delays. The march highlighted the wider struggles faced by the creative community. SACO revealed that South Africa's cultural, creative and sports industries, CCI&S, contributed an estimated $15.03 billion to the national economy in 2023, accounting for about 3.9% of the GDP. Unati Luchaba is the executive director at SACO.
We need policies and investment that ensures inclusive transformation, and especially now the world is being transformed and AI is transforming how creative and even sports are actually consuming and creating their products. So we need policies that ensure inclusive digital transformation as well, so that innovation is not just a privilege of just a few, but the right of all creative South Africans.
And finally, a consortium led by U.S. oil major Chevron has signed exclusive lease agreement today to look for natural gas of southern Greece, expanding the United States' presence in the eastern Mediterranean. The deal doubles the amount of Greek maritime acreage available for exploration and is the second in months involving a U.S. energy measure as the European Union seeks to phase out supplies from Russia and the U.S. seeks to replace them. Today's agreement allows Chevron to lead the search for gas in 4 deep sea blocks south of Peloponnese Peninsula and the island of Crete, stretching across 47,000 square kilometers. Your financial indicators: one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 352, and Botswana is 13 pula 03. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 05, and in Zambia it's 18 kwacha 23. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 22. Russia is 76 rubles 61. India is 90 rupees 69. China is 6 yuan 91, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 15 rand 94. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,955 and platinum at $2,013 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $68.39 a barrel. Now, for any stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The 39th African Union Summit of Heads of State and Government wrapped with leaders reaffirming commitments to peace and security across Africa, advancing the African Union reform agenda, strengthening the AU's participation in the G20, pursuing justice and reparations for people of African descent, and accelerating the implementation of Agenda 2063. Delivering the outcome report to the media, African Union Commission Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf said discussions centered on strategic priorities, including reports from assembly committees on Agenda 2063. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe reports from Ethiopia, time now being 6:45 Central African.
Held under the theme Assuring Sustainable Water Availability and Safe Sanitation Systems to Achieve the Goal of Agenda 2063, leaders came together in pursuit of a healthier and more prosperous Africa, aiming to bring hope and opportunity to millions of citizens. The African Union identified sustainable water and sanitation systems as a key priority for 2026, viewing this as a crucial step toward achieving the healthy aspirations of Agenda 2063. However, attention was also extended to a range of other issues as outlined by AU Commission Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf.
We tried to focus our attention on strategic issues. Most of the deliberations and discussions took place in this hall with regard to peace and security on the continent, the reforms that we are trying to put in place for this organization, and at the end also the participation of the African Union to the G20. Of course, we received the reports of the assembly committees, which are presided over by heads of states. Agenda 2063 was one of them, the reports, or the NEPAD report, the AFCFTA report, and so on and so forth. And in particular also a report on the UN Security Council reforms and the demands of the African Union to have these 2 permanent seats with the right of veto and 5 non-permanent seats.
The 4-day summit also hosted nearly 15 side events, including a new business forum aiming at mobilizing private sector support to help finance the continent's development programs.
And as side events, there were almost 15 side events that have been organized during these 4 days of the 39 session of the summit. We had a forum of the business community. That was also something new, given the fact that the financing of our development programs are becoming more and more challenging. It has been advised that we embark on a journey with our business community so that they also become a contributor to our development programs. And we had a forum as a side event in this building.
Ali Yusuf said African leaders have reaffirmed a zero-tolerance stance on unconstitutional changes of government while strengthening commitments to peace, stability, and the AU's Silencing the Guns initiative. He says lasting peace remains essential for continental development and deeper regional integration.
So the conference actually pinpointed the fact that the heads of state will have zero tolerance for unconstitutional or unconstitutional change of governments on our continent. The conference also underscored its determination to silence the guns. This is also a very important program if we contemplate to develop this continent and create the integration conditions for our countries. We need to silence the guns. We need peace on this continent. We need stability on this continent. And we have a program for that. And the conference really underscored the necessity and its determination to pursue the goal of silencing the guns.
The AU has also recognized colonization as a crime against humanity and reiterated solidarity with the Palestinian people, reaffirming support for Palestinian statehood amid ongoing tensions in Gaza and the West Bank.
It's very important also, one last point, that the conference recognized, colonization as a crime against humanity. That's very important. And the conference expressed its solidarity with Palestine and the Palestinian people and invited the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority to come and deliver his speech here. This is a tradition in this building. This is not the first time, but given the circumstances now, what is going on in Gaza and the West Bank, I think it had a more, let's say, symbolic importance importance than anything else. But the African Union member countries support the rights of the people of Palestine to become independent and have their own statehood.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama, who is AU champion on reparations, says efforts are underway to advance reparatory justice, with Ghana leading a diplomatic push at the United Nations to recognize slavery and the transatlantic slave trade as crimes against humanity. He said a high-level committee has been established to coordinate consultations and prepare a draft resolution in line with international law.
At the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025, I announced that Ghana would lead the effort to table a resolution declaring slavery and the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. That commitment marked the beginning of a structured diplomatic and legal process. I directed the Minister of Foreign Affairs to establish a high-level committee to coordinate consultations, refine the legal framework, and prepare a draft text consistent with international law and diplomatic practice.
He said progress has been made on the reparations initiative, anchored in international law and guided by historical accuracy, legal defensibility, and continental alignment.
Today, I'm pleased to report significant progress. The initiative is firmly grounded in international law. Slavery is prohibited under international law as a peremptory norm, a jus cogens principle from which no derogation is permitted. The resolution builds upon this legal foundation and rests on three pillars. First is historical accuracy, second is legal defensibility, and third is continental and diaspora alignment.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Coming up, we go to Mozambique, where there's a strike of health workers there, and it's threatening to bring a halt to health services in the country unless the government steps in and gives the workers their end-of-year bonus. The government has announced that it cannot afford the full bonus. They can only give 40% of it right now. So we'll see how that one pans out. This is Rise and Shine.
Madapiri pazoshitika. Madapiri pazoshitika.
Madotolo oposa 1,500 amene ntchito yaulere mu zipatala zaboma mu dziko la Zambia azanyanyala ntchito lachisanu sabata yammawa, ndipo Daniel Shabanda kutambasula nkhaniyi.
Madotolo oposa 1,500 amene amagwira ntchito mopanda malipiro apamwezi dziko la Zambia akuyembekezera kuyamba kunyanyala ntchito. Ichi ndi chifukwa chakuti boma lalephera kuwalemba ntchito monga mmene lidawalonjezera. Channel Africa News yalankhulana ndi mkulu wa bungwe la madotolo la Resident Doctors Association of Zambia, Dr. Paul Chiwe, akugomeza kuti madotolo ambiri amene akugwira ntchito mu zipatala zaboma akugwira ntchito yaulere, ndipo ali ndi chiyembekezo chakuti tsiku lina adzalembedwa ntchito ndi boma.
Zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo, lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi Madapiri. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
The Mozambican Association of Health Workers, APSUZM, has threatened to bring health service in the country to collapse unless the government agrees to pay them the end-of-year bonus. This after the government announced that it cannot afford to pay the bonus in full, but will pay 40% in two installments, one in January and one this February. Last year, the government paid 50% of the bonus to workers in the public administration. Anselmo Muchavi, president of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, is on the line now to discuss this matter with us. Anselmo, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Channel Africa. Good morning, Africa. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. But not such a good story right now, especially given that Cyclone Gezani has also wreaked its own havoc in the country. Now, health workers are on strike when health services are already in strain. So the 30-day strike was issued, last week it announced that a 30-day strike, the union, was going to start this past Friday. Talk to us about what transpired.
Yeah, the problem for this moment is our government. Our government is keep quiet and won't fight against strikers. The government doesn't want to give installment for all the health workers in Mozambique. They keep quiet and won't stop us fight against our needs. The way we fight the way we fight, because the government now it don't is keep quiet, is don't say nothing. The government doesn't want to sit with us to manage this situation.
What has the effect been then of the strike? Have all the workers heeded the call to go on strike?
Yes. All the health workers is in the strike, and now we start last month, and yesterday we promote prorogation for this is for more than 30 days, and all the health workers in all countries and all hospitals will close because our government is keep quiet and don't say nothing to solve our problem. And we don't know what's happening with the government in this moment, what the government need with us on, because our government is not because of installment only, it's because of the medicines, it's because of the surgical materials, because of the fuel and ambulance. Many things in our hospital is very damaged. That's why we ask for the president to decide to tell our world that the Mozambican health is collapsed. But the president right now is keep quiet. The ministers right now is trying to stop it started to tell a journalist to stop asking him about strike. This is not fair. This is not fair because the government must solve all problem in hospital. It's not only for 60% of the installment. It's for medicines. It's for food in the hospital, the fuel and ambulance. Because many people die in the hospitals in Mozambique because of the medicines and food and surgical material. Now, the all hospital in Mozambique that has that soup to clean the hospital. It doesn't have gloves. It doesn't have nothing. This is a very, very, very dangerous for us. Imagine you manage somebody with HIV or another disease without gloves or without mask, and somebody with the TB without mask. Mozambique is the health service is very collapsed. I ask for all to help us and solve this, because it's impossible to all health workers work without material. Days ago, last year, we saw somebody transferred to Mozambique to South Africa with something inside. With something inside, because Mozambique doesn't have just cotton. Simple cotton. Mozambique doesn't have cotton in the hospital. Mozambique doesn't have nothing. We can prove. We have the image. We have the documents. Now Mozambique all hospital, it doesn't have fuel to transfer a patient to a biggest hospital. And this biggest hospital doesn't have material, doesn't have medicines, it doesn't have a small thing like soup. It's very, very dangerous for us. And we start in our strike, and we not stop fighting with government. We will not stop fighting because they all ministers, all the honorable people go to outside, go to South Africa, to go to Europe to use our clinic outside. That's why 7 days and in January, somebody is dying in Europe. Is dying in Europe, and Mozambique is like cemetery. It's like cemetery because the people doesn't want to go to this hospital because this hospital is very collapsed.
And that seems to be the theme on our continent, isn't it? Our health systems are not up to par, and then our leaders leave the countries of origin to seek for medical help elsewhere instead of fixing the domestic health services. So what will you do from here on out then, Anslimo, as the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, if government doesn't answer to your demands? As you say, they previously don't even want to speak to the media about what's going on.
We start when you go to the media, when we submitted the document to the First Minister. We submitted this document because we're open to talk, we're open to solve, but it's dangerous for us to work without material, just material. If somebody today or the government today buy gloves, by medicines, by soap to clean a hospital, by food, by fuel, we can start working. But without this, it's impossible to us talk with any patient, because in our maternity in Mozambique, the people sleep four in the one bed, 4 people in the one bed. This is dangerous. This is dangerous.
Yeah, I think let's leave it there for now, because we are completely out of time. I think you've painted a clear enough picture for us, but you are saying that you're still open to negotiate with the government. You do want to talk still to find solutions to these issues. Anselmo, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Channel Africa to help us to show the world what's happening in Mozambique. And I ask the world to help our health service. Sorry.
Right, thanks. Anselmo Muchave is president of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique. Let's get to the news as we enter the second hour of Rise and Shine. Good morning to you, and here's Jolani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says a new Angola-mediated ceasefire with the M23 group will start today. The agreement is intended to bring an immediate halt to hostilities in the east, where communities have borne the brunt of recurring clashes. Speaking after the 39th ordinary session of the Assembly of the African Union at the headquarters in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, Kenyatta has indicated that mediation efforts are beginning to take shape and that discussions among the parties have been constructive.
We are making good headway. The team is working well. We're looking forward to future meetings where we hope to consolidate positions and begin the actual work on the ground to see that the people of DRC get the peace and stability that they deserve.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission Cases Inquiry has heard a scathing attack on South Africa's former President Thabo Mbeki on the fourth day of public hearings at the TRC Cases Inquiry in Newtown in Johannesburg. Lukhanyo Calata, son of Fort Calata, who was part of the Cradock Four, murdered by the apartheid state in 1985, has laid the blame for the denial of justice squarely at Mbeki's door. Calata says that the TRC's final report, referring 300 cases to the National Prosecuting Authority for investigation and prosecution, was handed to Mbeki in 2003. Mbeki has in recent years denied leaning on the NPA to stall progress on the TRC cases. Calata says the former president had 2 terms of office from 1999 to 2008 to do justice to those who were at the receiving end of apartheid-era human rights violations.
Now he issues a statement and he says the NPA must demonstrate enough integrity by apologizing for not processing the TRC cases rather than engage in dishonorable behavior of trying to hide behind a fig leaf which is nothing more than pure fabrication. Here, former President Thabo Mbeki insults our intelligence. He says the NPA, they must demonstrate enough integrity. What about integrity on his half? How about him apologizing to us for the failures of his administrations to process TRC cases? He says the NPA is engaging in dishonorable behavior. Well, I suppose his behavior was quite honorable. Yet here I sit without justice for my father.
Still in South Africa, a fourth suspect in the killing of 22-year-old Nigerian e-hailing driver Isaac Sattlet is expected to make his first appearance in the Pretoria Magistrates Court today. He handed himself over to the police yesterday in Outridgeville in Pretoria. Sattlet was killed after responding to a trip request. His body and hijacked vehicle were later found abandoned in Outridgeville. Tato Litzhaba reports.
The 22-year-old was strangled inside his vehicle in Outridgeville last week. His killing caused an outrage after a video circulated on social media of him being murdered. On Monday, 3 accused Dikeledi Mphahlele, Khwetsione Machidi and McLaren Mushwana briefly appeared in the Pretoria Magistrates Court facing charges of premeditated murder and robbery aggravating circumstances. The trio abandoned their bail application and will return to court next week.
Officials in Madagascar say at least 59 people have died after Cyclone Gezani struck the island country last week. The Disaster Management Office says it's assessing the impact of the second tropical storm to hit Madagascar this year. The cyclone displaced over 16,000 people. 15 people remain missing. The National Bureau for Risk says 804 people have been left injured and over 4,000 have been classified as affected by the disaster. Gezani barreled through the country just 10 days after tropical cyclone Faitia killed 14 people and displaced thousands. And finally, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has met the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Budapest. Rubio, who was on the second leg of a 2-day tour of Central Europe, visiting Slovakia and Hungary, both countries are reliant on Russian oil and are widely seen as Moscow's strong supporters in the European Union as Russian troops continue their full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Speaking at a joint news conference afterwards, he expressed U.S. support for Orban, who is currently trailing in the most polls ahead of the elections in April.
It's not an exaggeration. The relationship between the United States and Hungary today is as close as I can possibly imagine it being. And it's not just close rhetorically, it's close in action and things that are actually happening. I can say to you with confidence that President Trump is deeply committed to your success because your success is our success. Because this relationship we have here in Central Europe through you is so essential and vital for our national interests.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the draw for the CAF Interclub quarterfinals will take place today at the Egyptian Football Association headquarters in Cairo, Egypt, and all the action from day one of the Qatar Open. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, here's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Yes, it is Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, a very good morning to you. 6 minutes past 7 Central African time it is, and we enter the second hour of the show. We are, of course, Channel Africa, and from the African perspective, on this particular show, we bring you news and current affairs from that African perspective. So connect with us on channelafrica.co.za. You can find us on the SABC Plus app via mobile phones. You can find us live streaming on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. And we are also on the DSTV audio bouquet, channel number 802. In this hour, we look at the UN Human Rights Office saying violations committed by Sudan's Rapid Support Forces during the capture of the city of Al Fasher may amount to war crimes and possible crimes against humanity. We'll discuss that in terms of what applies then when one needs to classify that. And then the United States has a new ambassador designate in South Africa at a time of strained relations. Leo Brent Bozell III has arrived in Pretoria amid a year of sharp disagreements over a few things, and we'll discuss that in terms of can this appointment signal a reset or more friction? We'll be joined by former U.S. diplomat and international relations expert on that one. My name is Asanda Beda. Let's cover these stories and more, so stay with us.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence, rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The UN Human Rights Office says violations committed by Sudan's Rapid Support Forces during the capture of the city of Al Fasher may amount to war crimes and possible crimes against humanity. The findings are based on interviews with more than 140 victims and witnesses and document over 6,000 killings in just the first 3 days of the offensive. Joining us now from Nairobi is Saif Magango, who is spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Office, to unpack. Saif, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. First, what is the UN Human Rights Office most concerned about in terms of what happened in Al Fasher?
Well, we are concerned about this pattern of human rights violations and violations of international human rights law in Sudan, in Al Fasher, but also across the Sudan. 3 years, almost 3 years now since the conflict began in that country. What we documented in Al Fasher in the past few days of the fight to capture Al Fasher by the Rapid Support Forces, there was absolute carnage. The killings that took place absolutely confound and assault the conscience of humanity. For 6,000 people to be killed in a matter of 3 days indicates a systematic pattern of wanton killing and violating human rights and people's lives and killing them for politics on ethnic grounds. And that's absolutely uncalled for. And this is a repeat of a pattern we've seen in attacks by the RSF when they take over different towns from Al-Damata to Al-Geneina. And now, as they've moved into Kordofan, there are fears that these violations that we documented might recur. And that's something that we're warning the world to do everything possible to prevent.
What constitutes war crimes and crimes against humanity? Can you describe it in practical terms for our listeners to understand when a situation becomes classified as one of these? You mentioned figures. Is it about the number of people? Is it about people being killed along ethnic lines? How do we practically explain it?
Well, you remember, and your viewers will perhaps remember this, that for 18 months since until the capture of Al Fasher, the city was under siege for a whole 18 months. People were eating animal feed and unable to access the basics of life, water, shelter, and many of the people of Darfur had been displaced into the camps of Zamzam and Ashuk and other places. And there was a massive attack on Zamzam camp that also killed hundreds upon hundreds of people. Now, when the attack on Al Fasher, the city to take it over happened, again, these killings took place. You ask about what a war crime is. A war crime is, that would be, as our report says, the acts that were carried out by the Rapid Support Forces could constitute the war crime of murder, many other war crimes. I'll look for the exact phrase that was used, that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the RSF and affiliated Arab militia committed acts amounting to the war crime of murder, intentionally directing attacks against civilians and civilian objects, launching indiscriminate attacks, use of starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, attacks directed against medical and humanitarian personnel, infliction of sexual violence, including rape, torture, and other cruel treatment, acts of pillage, and the conscription and enlistment and use of children in hostilities. And when these are war crimes, crimes against civilians in a situation of armed conflict, when these such acts are committed as part of a sustained systematic attack on a civilian population, then they could amount to crimes against humanity.
So as you mentioned before, 6,000 killings were documented by your team. How were you able to verify these figures under such difficult situations that you faced there?
Yeah, indeed, that's a very good question. We spoke to many victims and witnesses who told us that they saw dozens upon dozens of people killed, bodies strewn on the road from Al-Fashar to Tawila, and many of them gave consistent numbers in different locations of people killed in the dozens, in the hundreds. So through our methodology, we're able to deduce that the number that were killed in those 3 days was more than 6,000. But not to forget that this number is not definitive as the total that of number of people killed in that campaign. It is entirely possible, and I think it is certainly the case, that the number that we have published of 6,000 is only the tip of the iceberg. There are other statistics that point to very high numbers, and from the pattern of attacks and the number of people killed in other situations, it is normal, almost normal now that when they take over a town, they kill people in very large numbers. So we cannot verify 100% that the number of people killed, but it is deeply concerning that in only 3 days, 6,000 people were killed. And that's why we're basically calling for investigations by, including by the ICC, which has already assessed that war crimes may have taken place in Al-Fashar, and to hold those people responsible to account, including those in command positions.
Yeah, it is definitely concerning, this type of violence. But what does it also tell us about the way in which the rapid support forces are operating, particularly in Darfur, this type of violence you're seeing?
Well, it points to a campaign of ethnically based attacks and targeting of those considered to be non-Arabs in that part of Sudan, and it echoes patterns in the past, including the acts of the Janjaweed in the early 2000s in that region. We consistently seeing attacks by people, by Arab allies and fighters of the RSF, attacking people who look like you and me, of the Zagawa community in that region. A pattern that has also been repeated multiple times in the current conflict, which started in April 2023. We saw this happen in a number of situations where where the RSF have taken over a town, the carnage that happens during that period. And really, we can talk about all these repetitions of the violations, but the point to underline here is that there has to be an end to this conflict. People have suffered enough. 3 years of incessant fighting needs to be it. The conflict needs to end today, not tomorrow. there has to be accountability.
And what is the message that the UN Human Rights Office is sending to the victims? What would you like them to know, the victims and survivors in Al Fasher, who may feel like the world has moved on from them?
Well, as you know, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, was recently in Sudan just a couple of weeks ago, and he visited the IDP camp Al Afad, which is a northern state. And he also had meetings with civil society groups and other interlocutors to hear from them directly and to tell them that the world is watching and the world is listening and the world is advocating. And we, as the United Nations, are pushing all states with influence on the situation to take action and stop the fighting. The High Commissioner has repeatedly been calling for accountability for these human rights violations, not only within the Sudanese context, but also the international fora and also under universal jurisdiction, but also for a ceasefire to be agreed and implemented, leading to a peaceful settlement of the conflict, because there can be no military solution to this crisis. Otherwise, it would have been found. And then there's
we'll leave it there for now. And thanks again for your insights.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
It's Saif Makango, spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Office, joining us live from Nairobi, giving us the latest there in terms of the UN's findings on alleged Rapid Support Forces violations in Al Fasher, that is in Sudan.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África. A perspectiva africana.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The United States has a new ambassador designate in South Africa at a time of strained relations. Leo Brent Bozell III has arrived in Pretoria amid a year of sharp disagreements over race, trade, foreign policy and aid. Washington has criticized South Africa's ties with Russia and China, pushed a refugee program for white South Africans, and called on Pretoria to drop its genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice, all issues at the heart of South Africa's foreign policy. With Pretoria still without an ambassador in Washington, can this appointment signal a reset or more friction? Joining us now to attempt to answer this question is former U.S. diplomat and international relations expert J. Brooks Spector. Ambassador Spector, good morning. It's always great to get this type of analysis from you. How are you this Tuesday?
I'm okay. I appreciate the promotion. I was never an ambassador. I was a diplomat. I mean, you only get one ambassador per country. You get several diplomats in an embassy. But
take on that one, sorry.
As I say, I appreciate the promotion. It was very nice, especially first thing in the morning like that. The appointment of an ambassador to a country by country A to country B is usually not a particularly vexatious or troublesome issue. And in this case, I think it's more a reflection of the way in which the bigger relationship between the two countries in government terms has taken shape, rather than the specifics of the individual concerned. Brent Bozell is not obviously a career diplomat. He was a a media critic and a writer and a stout conservative analyst. I don't mean stout in the sense of big round the waist, but strong and sturdy. But what has happened is this appointment has become something of a lightning rod in the larger picture of the relationship. But let's be really straightforward and clear about it. An ambassador doesn't represent himself or herself as much as they represent the policies of the government and the head of state that has appointed them. And so you can expect that Bozell will be a strong advocate for the views of the Trump administration. He will season it with his own style, but it's the question is, how do the two countries find a way out of their current sharp-elbowed circumstance? It's up to the South Africans, of course, to appoint their own ambassador to Washington. And there have been a number of people who have been suggested, but so far, at least, nobody has actually been named and nominated. And that, I think, is a shame, because you lose a voice in Washington when you need one. I mean, there are career diplomats in an embassy, and they make their representations to the various parts of the government and so forth. But you do need the head of an organization, the head of a mission, the head of an embassy, to make the case as clearly and as crisply as is possible. What I expect of Brent Bozell is very simple. He will find his way in Pretoria and in South Africa as a whole to make as best he can the arguments that the Trump administration has been making, which you have quite clearly identified as some of the key sticking points. You left out, however, in the foreign policy area, you left out South Africa's relationship with Iran, which is something that is a particular bugbear for Washington. And the Trump administration in particular has been very unhappy with South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice over the charges of genocide by Israel in Gaza. So there's lots of room for improvement. The question will be how well they manage to do it.
So how is he likely to be received then in Pretoria, Brent Bozell III, as he meets President Cyril Ramaphosa?
How well is he likely to be received? Well, he'll be received correctly, because he has to present his letters of credence to be a designated and officially recognized ambassador. He'll make his appointments, or his office will make his appointments with the various cabinet ministers and heads of political parties and heads of business and labor and other organizations. But I hope, and this is my wish for him, that he spends a lot of time listening. Spends a lot of time listening to what South Africans have to say, not simply official South Africans, but the much bigger canvas of South Africans, whether it's academics or whether it's business people, or whether it's ordinary workers, or whether it's commentators of one type and another. I really hope that his office steers him into a listening mode for a while, because that way a certain amount of wisdom and an understanding of the way in which South Africa got to where it is will become important.
Bozell opposed U.S. engagement with the African National Congress political party during apartheid, but has said that he respects our former statesman Nelson Mandela. How might that history shape perceptions about him now?
Oh, that was a long time ago. Let's remember that. That goes back to, excuse me, sorry. That goes back to the 1980s, and lots of people had differing opinions about organizations like the ANC or the PAC, for that matter, or ZAPO. I don't think we can hold it against him in any way that at the time, in the mid to late 1980s, he felt, as someone like Margaret Thatcher did, that the ANC was not an appropriate organization to lead this country. people change, events change, circumstances change, and political parties like the ANC now are not at all like the way they might have been in the mid-1980s. And I think we'll simply have to take Mr. Bozel's views on things as they are as important rather than the things that were, 40 years ago? Because if we're all judged on the basis of what we might have said 40 years ago, we're all going to be in some difficulty, I'm afraid. So I would counsel people in South Africa to put that question on the back burner and be much more interested in what he says and what he thinks now that he's coming into his office and as he begins to meet and speak with people. Let me just add one other footnote, if I might. Mm-hmm. The relationship between the two countries is not simply one of government to government. There are, some 600 or so American businesses who work, who have activities, who have offices, factories, arrangements in South Africa, and they affect many, many thousands of South Africans who are the employees and many more who are obviously the customers. There are hundreds of organizations that are not government that engage with South Africans and which have relationships or roots in the United States, whether they're church groups or NGOs or academic organizations or individuals pursuing various kinds of careers. And one of the things that we really need to remember is the totality of a relationship between two countries that have all kinds of depth and broadness is not simply one of government A to government B. And that's something that a good ambassador makes use of and builds upon rather than simply only worrying about how the things go between the ambassador and cabinet minister X or Y or Z. There are going to be lots of bumps in the road. There are going to be lots of coughs and harsh statements. And I do hope that he manages to rise above even some fairly strong criticism or hard criticism of the Trump administration to make an effort to engage with all of South Africa rather than simply those people who might agree with him.
Right, let's leave it there for today. Mr. Brooks Spector, always great catching up with you.
Pleasure. You take care. Have a good day and good day to your listeners.
Great, you too. Thank you so much. That's former U.S. diplomat and international relations expert. I still think ambassador suits him, but no, he's not. He's a former U.S. diplomat and international relations expert, J. Brooks Spector. Let's get our news headlines. It's now 7:31 Central African time. Here's Jolane Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, a group of former independence fighters in Zimbabwe have filed a legal challenge against the government's plans to extend President Emmerson Mnangagwa's term in office. Medics in Sudan say a drone strike by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has killed 3 people and wounded 7 others in Sennar State. And finally, United States President Donald Trump has said he believes Iran wants to make a deal over its nuclear program. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now catch you up with what's happening in the world of sports, and we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Good morning once again from the Sports Desk. So in case you missed it, the Confederation of African Football will today conduct the quarterfinal draws of both the CAF Champions League as well as the CAF Confederation Cup 2025-2026 at the Egyptian Football Association in Cairo, Egypt. Now, the teams that have qualified now for the CAF Confederation Cup quarterfinals are USM Alger of Algeria, Olympique de Safi of Morocco, Wydad Casablanca of Morocco, Menema FCA of the Democratic Democratic Republic of Congo, CR Belouizdad of Algeria, Otoho de Oyo of Congo, Zamalek from Egypt, as well as Al Masry from Egypt. Meanwhile, the teams qualifying for the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League includes the defending champions Pyramids FC of Egypt, Renaissance Bagan of Morocco, Al Ali of Egypt, FAR Rabat of Morocco, Al Hilal Omdurman of Sudan, Mamelodi Sundowns from South Africa, Stade Milan from Mali, as well as Espérance Sportive de Tunis of Tunisia. So the Confederation Cup's draw will be conducted at 1 p.m. Central African Time and the CAF Champions League draw at 2 p.m. Central African Time. Australia's hopes now of reaching the Super 8 stages of the T20 World Cup are all but over after Sri Lanka's Pathum Nissanka hit a brilliant unbeaten 100. This condemned them to an 8-wicket defeat in Palake yesterday. Now stunned by Zimbabwe in their second outing last Friday, Australia needed to win to keep their qualification fate in their own hands, but it is Sri Lanka who now march into the next stages of the T20 World Cup. Now for Australia to sneak through as the second place team from this group, they will rather need Zimbabwe to lose their remaining 2 matches against Ireland as well as Sri Lanka and then defeat Oman themselves, which would then bring the net run rate into play. Let's hear from the captain of the side, Mitchell Marsh, reflecting on their defeat last night.
Oh mate, yeah, pretty shattered group. Disappointing to lose that game, but yeah, fair play to Sri Lanka. So the way they batted, they outplayed us, but the boys are hurting. Yeah, look, I think it was probably just execution tonight. That full strength batting lineup has got some of the best players to spin in Australia, well, the best players to spin in Australia. So it was probably more just execution tonight, and I thought Sri Lanka pulled it back beautifully. We were a few short after the start. We probably knew that going into the second innings, but we had great belief that we'd get the job done, but we were outplayed.
On to boxing news now. Tyson Fury said Anthony Joshua's tragic car accident in Nigeria that caused 2 fatalities was the turning point for him in his decision to return to the ring. Now, Joshua, a former heavyweight champion, sustained minor injuries in an accident in December of 2025, which killed his strength as well as conditioning coach Sina Gama and his trainer Latif Lats Adoyela. Fury, 37 years of age, announced his return from his latest spell of retirement in January. It will be his first fight for the former world heavyweight champion since losing to Asanda in December of 2024.
And I suppose the biggest turning point in this comeback for me was a tragedy that happened with Anthony Joshua. I was on holiday with my family in Thailand for Christmas, just to get away from the rain. Sick of the rain, it was depressing me. And then I hear all that bad news that's gone on. And I thought, life is very, very short and very precious and very fragile. And anything could happen at any given moment. And you should never put things off until tomorrow or next year or next week, because tomorrow is not promised to nobody. The Bible says tomorrow is not a gift. Tomorrow ain't promised. Tomorrow is a mystery. So we have to live for today. And me living for that day, I made my mind up there and then that I'm going to come back to boxing because it's something that I love and I'm passionate about.
Tennis news now. The world number 2 Jannik Sinner enjoyed a comfortable victory in his first match since losing to Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open semi-finals just a few weeks back. The Italian claimed a straight sets victory over Czech Republic's Tomáš Mahaj at the Qatar Open in Doha on Monday. Sinner won that tie 6-1 and 6-4, wrapping the first set in just 27 minutes. Sinner will face Australia's Alexei Popyrin in the last 16, with the world number 53 having beaten local wildcard Murabarak Shanan Zayed 6-love and 6-2. Now the world number 11 Daniil Medvedev of Russia claimed a straight sets victory as well, beating China's Zhengyang Shang 6-4 and 6-2, while 6th seed Jakub Minsk is also through to the last 16, having come from behind to beat Great Britain's Jan Koneski. After losing the first set tie break to the world number 124, the Czech Republican world number 1 recovered then to win that tie 6-7, 6-2 and 6-4. Meanwhile, British number 1 Emma Raducanu has been knocked out of the Dubai Tennis Championship in the first round. She recovered from a set as well as a tiebreak down against Antonia Ruzek to force a decider, but the Croatian prevailed, winning that tie 6-1, 5-7 and 6-2. Ruzek is ranked 67th in the world and was one of the 7 lucky losers from qualifying to fill the main draw after several players pulled out through injury, illness or a schedule change. Raducanu's initial opponent, Elisabetta Corseretto, was ruled out with a thigh problem, and Rizik won the first set in 30 minutes, having twice broken Raducanu. The world number 25 then sought medical attention, just as she did last week at the Qatar Open, where she was, where she actually eventually ended up retiring in the first round match due to an injury concern in that encounter from last week. It brings the time to 7:38 a.m. Central African Time. It concludes your sports news, Asawam. I do return in the next an hour, the final hour of Africa Rise and Shine, with a final sports update on the show. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do remember to send us an email first to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Also call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, we look at the shortfalls of household surveys and broad economic statistics when it comes to guiding policy, and how one solution to that is the use of administrative tax data gathered in what are called data labs. We'll hear from a research fellow at the United Nations University World Institute for Development Economics research on that.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Here's Nosipo Zuma to give us what's happening, an update from the world of business from the African perspective.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. In your business news this hour, South Africa's fragile labour market is set to come under the spotlight when the latest unemployment figures are released today. Stats SA is due to publish the results of its quarterly labour force survey for the first quarter of last year, or final quarter of last year. Economists are expecting that shifts in the official unemployment rate over the last 3 months of 2025 may build on the modest positive momentum seen in the third quarter. Benguela Global Fund Manager, Senior Portfolio Manager Grant Nader says they are looking to see ongoing stability.
We'd like to see this stemming of the losses in the manufacturing sector. As the rand strengthens, it makes it cheaper to import. So we don't want to see that sector coming under too much pressure. And then we'd like to see that momentum in the hospitality and retail, on the back of good tourism, add some further jobs. So around 31.7, 31.8 would be a nice little positive surprise.
The South African Cultural Observatory, SACO, has called for informed policy decisions around the welfare of people in creative sectors. Hundreds of film and television workers marched outside Parliament last month under the banner Save SA Film Jobs to protest the declining employment and funding delays. The march highlighted the wider struggles faced by the creative community. SACO revealed that South Africa's cultural, creative and sports industries, CCI&S, contributed an estimated $15.3 billion to the national economy in 2023, accounting for about 3.9% of GDP. Onatule Chaba is the executive director of SACO.
We need policies and investment that ensures inclusive transformation. And especially now, the world is being transformed and AI is transforming how creative and even sports are actually consuming and creating their products. So we need policies that ensure inclusive digital transformation as well, so that innovation is not just a privilege of just a few, but the right of all creative South Africans.
Zambia's mining regulator says that underground operations at Mopani copper mine's Mufulira mine could resume immediately after new safety measures were implemented. The Mineral Regulations Commission says it had suspended operations at the mine after it failed to comply with safety regulations, specifically the requirement to maintain an accurate system to account for all its underground workers. Mopani Copper Mines is one of the biggest copper miners in Zambia, Africa's second largest producer of the metal vital for clean energy technology. Liberia Mines Minister says he expects the country's iron ore output to triple to around 30 million metric tons this year, driven by ArcelorMittal Liberia's planned ramp-up and fresh volumes from new and revived projects. The West African nation produced about 10 million tons in 2025, almost all of it from AML, its main mining operator. Luxembourg-based ArcelorMittal is investing in expanding its Liberian operations and can buy a new contractor and major rail and port upgrades. The company said last month that it planned to shift 20 million tons of iron ore from Liberia in 2026 from historic levels of around 5 million tons per annum. Nigeria's annual inflation rate slowed slightly to 15.10% in January from 15.15% in December. The country statistics office says this marks the 10th straight monthly decline in the country's inflation rate. The data could encourage the central bank to cut interest rates next week when it is scheduled to announce its first monetary policy decision of 2026. At the previous release, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, adopted a revamped methodology that it said better reflects real-world prices. The methodology uses a 12-month reference period where the average consumer price index for the 12 months of 2024 is equated to 100, whereas previously the agency used a single-month reference period with December 2024 set to 100. Your financial indicators: one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 352, and Botswana is 13.03. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 05, and in Zambia it's 18 kwacha 23. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 22. Russia is 76 rubles 61. India it's 90 rupees 69. China it's 6 yuan 91, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 15 rand 94. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,955 and platinum at $2,013 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $68.39 a barrel. Now, for any stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
It's 7:46 Central African Time. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has again expressed doubt that a deal can be reached between the US and Iran ahead of the resumption of indirect talks in Geneva today. Netanyahu said he told US President Donald Trump last week that any US deal with Iran must include the dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure, not just stopping the enrichment process. Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Iran's foreign minister has arrived in Geneva ahead of a second round of indirect talks with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner that are expected to begin on Tuesday. The talks come as the U.S. is sending a second aircraft carrier group to the Middle East as the United States continues to build up its forces in the region to put pressure on Iran. On Saturday, large protests against the Iranian government and their treatment of demonstrators were held in cities around the world, including Los Angeles, Toronto, and Munich. Those were a part of a so-called global day of action called for by the exiled son of Iran's former Shah. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a speech in which he repeated his doubts that Iran would make a deal with the United States. He said, Iran is reliable on one thing: they lie and they cheat. But Netanyahu did describe his talks that were held with President Trump last week in Washington. He said that the president believes that a deal can be reached and that he is determined to see the process through. Now, Netanyahu also went into greater detail when he described Israel's demands of these negotiations and of any deal between the United States and Iran. He said that Iran must stop all enrichment of uranium and that the equipment needed to enrich uranium in the future must be destroyed. He said that all of the highly enriched uranium that Iran possesses must also be taken out of the country. It's believed that Iran possesses more than 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium. Russia has offered to take it out of Iran in the event that a deal is reached. Netanyahu also repeated his demand that limits be placed on Iran's ballistic missile program. He said that they should be limited to a range of 300 kilometers. Of course, that's far shorter than the distance to Israel. And he also repeated the demand that Iran stop its support for proxy forces in the Middle East. Those include the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon. When it comes to the missiles, Iran has repeatedly and emphatically said that they are for defense and that they are a non-negotiable red line. Blake Sifton, SABC News, Tel Aviv.
Get in touch with us on Rise and Shine at Channel Africa 1 is our handle on the various social media platforms. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, as well as LinkedIn.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chemane.
Lelitla, talk to us about your relationship with your father, Coach Pitso. What is this one thing that he said to you that is still stuck at the top of your head?
Coach Pitso and our mom, Moira Chakale, have always told us that whatever we do in life, we must do it to the best of our abilities and, represent our family well. But the big thing is do what you love and do it with all the passion that you have. And I think we see it in both their work. I mean, my mom has done a really good job with placing Coach Pitso in different clubs around the world, and she's negotiated contracts, and she's showing that as a woman you can also do work that is seen, and you can also get respect from men in a male-dominated space. And I think my dad has also shown that you must never underestimate the Black African man.
Lelintle Musimane, a South African communications and digital media professional. Lelintle is also a daughter to a great mentor when it comes to the game of football, Coach Jingles Musimane.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Your companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's take a look at the story now. Across Africa, governments have long relied on household surveys and broad economic statistics to guide policy. While useful, these sources often miss the finer details needed to understand how reforms affect businesses, workers, and taxpayers. One solution gaining ground is the use of administrative tax data in secure research environments or data labs. These labs allow researchers and policymakers to safely access anonymized tax data, generating insights that can make economic policies more effective and equitable. Joining us now to explain how this works and what lessons countries like South Africa, Uganda, and Zambia are learning is Amina Ibrahim, who is Research Fellow at the United Nations University World Institute for Development Economics Research and focal point for the Domestic Revenue Mobilization Program. Amina, good morning to you, and thanks for making time to chat to us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your show this morning.
It's our pleasure. So can you start by explaining why administrative tax data is becoming so important when it comes to economic policy making on our continent of Africa?
Thanks. I guess you started off the conversation talking about household survey data. So governments have long relied on household survey data and broad aggregates, which can't really show us how policies affect specific firms, workers, or taxpayers. And this is really where administrative tax data can fill the gap, because it covers the universe of registered firms, taxpayers, workers, and it allows for policymakers to see actually who gains, who loses, and how much revenue is at stake. In South Africa, we've seen one study that links tax returns to customs and payroll data. And what this has enabled is actually to quantify problems such as profit shifting by multinationals. And the results of the study actually show that South Africa is losing around 1 billion rand in revenue due to transfer mispricing. So this is the kind of detailed evidence that helps revenue authorities and treasuries target enforcement where it matters most, rather than relying on these kind of broad and blunt measures. But also it really just kind of opens up entirely new questions. South Africa's got a problem with unemployment, and so what you can really do with administrative data is actually look into the labor market. How are young people faring in the labor market? How do they transition between jobs? How do wages differ by gender inside firms? What happens when you institute a minimum wage policy? And these are the kinds of studies in South Africa that really give government the sharper tools to design inclusive growth policies.
So what exactly are data labs and how do they assist researchers to work with sensitive tax information safely?
Great question. So hard to picture. I think for those who remember going to a library and a reading room, it's where you kind of researchers now can enter, but the data never leaves, right? So a data lab looks like a computer lab, something you may have seen at a university, but the difference here is that's where the information sits and how access is actually restricted. So within a lab setting, and the lab can be 2 computers to 12 computers, it's not restricted by size, but this is really where your tax records sit, anonymized, stored on servers in a highly controlled setting, and in line with your national data protection laws. So what this means in South Africa, Uganda, and Zambia is that actually access to administrative tax data is on site through controlled remote desktops. And what researchers receive is the aggregate and checked results. So they never actually get any individual records. And the authorities, the Ministry of Finance, the National Treasury, or the Revenue Authority keep full control. They approve the projects, they come, they vet the outputs, and if access, and they can revoke access if rules are broken or researchers don't adhere to the legal requirements. And I think because of this, these safeguards around anonymization, controlled access, tax authorities become more willing to open up their high quality data in order to do serious research. Uganda's lab, for example, started out with about 5 researchers, and within 3 years, they've actually gone to 40 researchers, and continuing to comply with the data protection rules.
So how does this then help to shape or improve economic reforms in these countries of South Africa, Uganda, and Zambia?
So, we can talk about some concrete examples, right? So in South Africa, work in the National Treasury Secure Data Facility has shown, and I mentioned, how much revenue is lost when multinationals manipulate prices within their own groups. And it kind of helps us to quantify transfer mispricing losses. And then researchers can go a step further and suggest kind of targeted steps that the South African Revenue Service can actually take to clamp down. Other studies have also linked labor data to firm level data. And here you can start thinking about inequality and how workers flow and turnover. In Uganda, we've seen researchers look at the universe of individual taxpayer records to study how a major shift in personal income tax reform raised the top rate for income earners and cut the rate for lower income earners. And this really showed us how top earners respond and that what that really means for revenue and inequality. And it helps the authority staff to understand where raising rates is effective and where enforcement and administration really matter. Similarly, in Zambia, we also use the taxpayer records to look into, to kind of track workers on how they behave when there's a change in these kind of tax thresholds. And it's super interesting to see how taxpayers behave. So taxpayers locate themselves or report just under tax threshold, so they remain in a specific tax bracket. And even though in Zambia the tax bracket changed, those taxpayers actually didn't change their behavior. And this really helps the revenue administration kind of understand how to actually design policies without any large efficiency costs.
That feeds into my next question then, I guess, on that. But what else then can other African countries learn from these experiences and apply them for their policy making to be more data-driven?
Absolutely. And I think the first lesson really for other African countries is around investing in basic data infrastructure. So basic data infrastructure and governance really pays off. And this is what the South African, Ugandan, and the Zambian labs show. So with clear legal frameworks, anonymization protocols, and access rules, even sensitive tax data can be safely used for research and in a public good sense. The second lesson, I think, is to start small but institutionalized. So you can start with a small focused lab inside a revenue authority, linking a few key data sets and to support a first wave of policy relevant projects to really demonstrate value. Uganda's got a nice example of this where they started off with these ad hoc data sharing agreements, and they became really overwhelmed with this. And once they moved this slowly into a small lab setting, they consolidated their resources and were actually able to open up access on a much broader and deeper scale.
Right. Let's leave it in just those two examples. I think that's enough for us, but we are completely out of time. Amina, we thank you so much again for chatting to us.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Amina Ibrahim, Research Fellow at the United Nations University World Institute for Development Economics Research and focal point for the Domestic Revenue Mobilization Program. 8 o'clock Central African time it is. We enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine with me, Asanda Beda. Good morning if you've just joined us. Let's start you off with our news update. Here's Dwalani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. A group of former independence fighters in Zimbabwe have filed a legal challenge against the government's plans to extend President Emmerson Mnangagwa's term in office. A formal notice has been published in Parliament confirming their proposals. Tabiso Lehoko has the story.
The war veterans' legal challenge seeks to stop the constitutional amendments, citing a conflict of interest. They say the president cannot oversee the process to extend his own term of office. The proposals, officially tabled today and approved by the cabinet last week, will extend a term limit for the president and members of parliament until 2030, effectively cancelling elections that were due in 2 years. The president would also be chosen by parliament rather than in a popular vote.
Medics in Sudan say a drone strike by the paramilitary rapid support forces has killed 3 people and wounded 7 others at a hospital in Sennar State. The Sudan Doctors Network says it is the latest in a series of attacks. The BBC's Temizgen Debesai has the details.
Sunday's strike on Al Mazmoum Hospital in southeast Sudan was the 4th attack on medical facilities this month by the Rapid Support Forces. The World Health Organization earlier reported more than 30 deaths from similar strikes in the Kordofan region. The Sudan Doctors Network condemned the assaults as violations of international laws prohibiting attacks on medical facilities and personnel. The strikes have increasingly targeted civilian infrastructure, including power stations, schools and markets.
Former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says a new Angolan-mediated ceasefire with the M23 group will start today. The agreement is intended to bring an immediate halt to hostilities in the east, where communities have borne the brunt of recurring clashes. Speaking after the 39th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Kenyatta has indicated that mediation efforts are beginning to take shape, and that discussions among the parties have been constructive.
We are making good headway. The team is working well. We're looking forward to future meetings where we hope to consolidate positions and begin the actual work on the ground to see that the people of DRC get the peace and stability that they deserve.
A fourth suspect in the killing of a 22-year-old Nigerian e-hailing driver, Isaac Sadlet, is expected to make his first appearance in the Pretoria Magistrates Court today in South Africa. He handed himself over to the police yesterday in Atteridgeville in Pretoria. Sadlet was killed after responding to a trip request. His body and hijacked vehicle were later found abandoned in Atteridgeville. Tadole Tsaba reports.
The 22-year-old was strangled inside his vehicle in Atteridgeville last week. His killing caused an outrage after a video circulated on social media of him being murdered. On Monday, 3 accused Dikeledi Mphahlele, Khwetsione Machidi and McLaren Mushwana briefly appeared in the Pretoria Magistrates Court facing charges of premeditated murder and robbery aggravating circumstances. The trio abandoned their bail application and will return to court next week.
And finally, United States President Donald Trump has said he believes Iran wants to make a deal over its nuclear program. His comments come on the eve of the second round of indirect negotiations between American and Iranian representatives in Geneva, mediated by Oman. The Iranian Foreign Ministry said the U.S. had moved towards a more realistic position on talks on its nuclear program. Trump was speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One.
I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. It's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 117 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the Proteas women's side fought in the third and final T20 international against Pakistan, while Tyson Fury says Anthony Joshua's fatal car crash in Nigeria last year spurred his decision to return to the ring. I'll tell you more at 8:30.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
On Rise and Shine this hour, we go to Kenya, where the President, William Ruto, says the African Continental Free Trade Area is entering a decisive implementation phase as Africa positions itself for stronger economic integration, industrial growth and expanded global trade. He was speaking at the recently concluded 39th African Union Summit of Heads of State and Government, this taking place in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Also, we'll be going to Zambia, and the country has become the latest country to suspend all livestock imports from South Africa, including live animals, livestock feed, and cloven-hoofed animal products like dairy products, unless strict disease control measures are in place. This as the foot and mouth disease outbreak continues. It's that season, unfortunately, for our farmers and those in that space of agriculture. animal production. So those stories and more are, of course, going to be coming up. We're together for another hour. It's the final one for Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, good morning to you. Connect with us as Channel Africa on channelafrica.co.za. That's our website. You can find us on the SABC Plus app via mobile phones. You can also find us live streaming at Channel Africa 1, that's on YouTube. That same social media handle is across the various platforms that one chooses to connect with us on. So do that. My name is Asanda Beda.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Kenyan President William Ruto says the African Continental Free Trade Area is entering a decisive implementation phase as Africa positions itself for stronger economic integration, industrial growth, and expanded global trade. Speaking at the recently concluded 39th African Union Summit of Heads of State and Government in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Ruto, the AU champion of the AfCFTA implementation, highlighted progress since the agreement became operational in January of 2021, noting that key protocols and institutional frameworks are now in place. He stressed that the focus has shifted from negotiations to delivering tangible benefits for Africa's 1.4 billion people, with the trade pact aimed at transforming borders into bridges for investment, enterprise and continental prosperity under Agenda 2063. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this report.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area is a pivotal step towards accelerating Africa's economic transformation and regional integration. By reducing tariffs, harmonizing trade regulations, and improving market access across the continent, the agreement creates a larger, more competitive single market. This encouraging intra-African trade idea will stimulate industrialization and support value addition rather than reliance on raw commodity exports. African economies can diversify, strengthen supply chains, and build greater resilience against global economic shocks. Kenyan President William Ruto explains the benefits of AfCFTA.
Africa today stands at an important moment in its economic journey, shaped by major demographic change, expanding regional integration, and rapid technological progress. These forces are redefining our role in global markets and creating new opportunities for investment, enterprise, and growth. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is one of the flagship projects of Agenda 2063 and a practical expression of our shared vision of the Africa we want. It reflects our collective determination to build an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful continent, driven by its own citizens and playing a stronger role in the global economy. By bringing together our markets, the AfCFTA creates the basis for structural economic transformation, enabling industrialization, value addition, and broad-based growth at continental level.
He stated that since its launch in 2021, significant progress has been achieved and the focus now remains firmly on implementation. However, he expressed concern about the persistent obstacles hindering its implementation.
Since entering its operational phase in January 2021, the AfCFTA has made meaningful progress. Most core protocols have been negotiated and institutional frameworks are in place. Our priority now shifts firmly from negotiation to implementation so that the agreement delivers tangible benefits for our 1.4 billion people. We all remember the original intention of ACFTA was for us to make our borders not barriers, not roadblocks, not impediments, but to make our borders stepping stones and bridges between our different countries so that we can trade better.
Former AU chairperson Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who is the driving force behind AU Agenda 2063, says the idea behind a borderless Africa means free movement of people and goods, visa-free travel for Africans, and payments in local currencies to boost intra-continental trade.
When the borderless Africa means we are one Africa. We are one Africa, and also we want to trade amongst ourselves as Africans. And trading means moving goods and people. Now, that's why we want borderless, so that traders can be able to move around Africa as they need to. So we want Africans not to need a visa to go to any African country. But also borderless is about the payment system. We don't want to continue paying through other people's currencies. We want to pay through our own currencies. So if I'm buying stuff from Ghana, I should be able to pay in my currency and they receive it in their currency. So that is also part of borderless.
Zuma added that a borderless Africa will enable free movement of skills, improve infrastructure and telecommunications, and drive economic growth and continental prosperity.
We also want skills to be able to move around the continent because there is a lot of work that needs skills. For instance, to move freely, you need road, you need rail, you need air travel, you need sea. So all that infrastructure that connects us needs to be up to scratch. So skills need to be able to move. Telecommunication, we need to be able to communicate freely. So that's what this borderless Africa means. And it will help to develop Africa. It will help to grow the economy. It will help to realize prosperity on the continent.
She cited slow implementation and low citizen engagement as key obstacles to achieving a borderless Africa under Agenda 2063.
The biggest roadblocks are the slow or lack of implementation. Decisions get taken, but it's the implementation that is slow. And the biggest roadblock also is us as citizens, because we don't take an interest in what should happen. Whereas Agenda 2063 says the Africa we want must be driven by its citizens. So this movement of a borderless Africa is about involving citizens and engaging citizens to be part of building this Africa we want, which is in part a borderless Africa.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
It's 15 minutes past 8 Central African time. We go to the story now. A newly formed mining industry body and advocacy organization, the Africa Gold Council, says it aims to strengthen and transform the gold sector across the continent. Launched at the just concluded 2026 Investing in African Mining Indaba in Cape Town, South Africa, the council is expected to help build a more productive, profitable and sustainable gold ecosystem in Africa, moving beyond the export of raw gold towards greater value addition on the continent. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
The Africa Gold Council says it aims to bring together policymakers, mining stakeholders, investors and researchers to create a unified voice for Africa's gold industry. Africa continues to export most of its gold in raw form. What concrete steps will the council take to ensure real value addition happens on the continent? Keith Nare is the director at Africa Gold Council.
Reversing raw gold exports through value addition. The status quo of exporting raw wealth is unsustainable. We are taking the following concrete steps to ensure real value remains on the continent. Firstly, integrated market development. Our vision is an integrated continental free market for gold and its precursor inputs. We are championing the supply of metallurgical expertise and processing innovation to ensure beneficiation happens locally. Secondly, ecosystem investments. Focusing on ecosystem investments, including efficient technology for processing and beneficiation, as well as competitive infrastructure and logistic networks to support domestic industrial use of gold.
Gold mining has also faced criticism around transparency, environmental damage, and community exclusion. Nare details how the council will balance profitability with sustainability and community benefit in a measurable way.
We obviously recognize that profitability cannot exist in a vacuum. We use measurable tools to ensure shared prosperity. Firstly, we have what we call the Community Transformation Index. This is our primary tool for measurability. We're introducing a community prosperity platform and index to provide an objective basis for modeling and articulating progress. This replaces generalized feedback with focused data that matches the specific needs of a community. Secondly, sustainability through dialogue. Our investment hypothesis is that facilitating a more productive dialogue between governments, investors, and host communities creates a footprint that is more sustainable than past extractive sectors. Artisanal and small-scale gold mining formalization. This is a major pillar of our strategy, and this strategy enables us to focus on ASGM by bringing those miners into harmonized, transparent ecosystem. We will be able to address environmental damage and exclusion at the grassroots level.
Meanwhile, the organization says promoting renewable data transparency and conducting research on gold production can be challenging in some regions, particularly where political uncertainty persists.
We believe that by building a deep shared knowledge base, we can mobilize social consent and unlock the optimal value of African gold for the citizens who own it.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg, South Africa.
So, Zambia is the latest country to suspend all livestock imports from South Africa, including live animals, livestock feed and cloven-hoofed animals or animal products like dairy products unless strict disease control measures are in place. This is as the foot and mouth disease outbreak continues. There's ongoing vaccination of the national herd in the country. Meanwhile, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa last week in his State of the Nation address declared the foot and mouth disease a national disaster in the country. To chat to us further on the efforts that are being made to fight the outbreak, we're now joined on the line by Chief Executive Officer of Agri SA, Johan Kotze. Johan, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
The vaccination drive that's going ahead, do you believe that this is going to make a difference?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that the Prime Minister said it's a national disaster, which means the disease spread so rapidly and it occurred in so many places that we can't fight the disease with the same conventional manners as what we do when you have a normal situation. So I think that's the first thing that we need to say that is a positive in the fight against the disease. Then in this abnormal situation, you do not have other option by literally blanket down vaccination, the right vaccination with all the controls and vaccinate all the critical areas and then preventative the animals close by. So you literally need to do it like setting out a fire with a blanket approach where you put a blanket over the fire and you literally smother the fire. So the vaccination is in this crisis is the best option that we have.
The continual ban of imports of livestock from South Africa, how does that affect farmers in the country?
So we export between 5 and 10% of our total produce, and we do have designated countries that are willing to accept our meat, even though we do vaccination program. But the effect of us not being able to export is an internal effect. So what you actually do is you bring back the meat that you could not export and you put it back into the market, which means you might have a surplus and that means your price is going to go down. I'm correct in the statistics, I believe that we put about 65% of our total production of weaners through feedlotters. And they are normally the exporters of meat. And then also the internal, program logistics going to the commercial or the retailers in South Africa. So the moment that you have a negativity coming into your market, even though it's 5%, even though it's not a big one, it literally goes down, and the ripple effect is the farmer eventually receives less for his weaner. So that's why it is such a big push from us as agriculture to get to a point where we say, but we need to make sure that even though we can do it with vaccination, we need to open up our trade and our markets.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared this foot and mouth disease outbreak a national disaster. Is this, as you see it, a progressive move, especially given that there is a season for FMD every year? It doesn't come as a surprise.
Yeah, I think it is. Remember, the normal way of handling it, I think if it wasn't as rapid and occurred so many places, we would still be in good standing in the way that we did it in the past. But what happened now is it is a disaster, and it's national. It's not just in one or two provinces itself. I think the main thing about a national disaster and declaring a national disaster is firstly the focus. And I would say it's a signal to the world out there to say, we collectively as a government are going to hone into the problem and see if we can share resources and mobilize resources to implement the strategy that we have to vaccinate and make sure we set out the rapid move of foot and mouth in South Africa. So the positive about a national crisis is actually an outcry to the world to say, as a government, we take hold and we take responsibility with the Department of Agriculture, and we're literally going to put more resources and efforts into this to coordinate it, not just on a national, on a provincial level or on a farm level, or in a department level. But now you talk about national, you talk about other ministries getting involved to help set out the fire that we need to that we deal with.
So over and above the animal producers, the farmers who deal directly with their livestock, you also mentioned the effect that this has on feedlot farmers. How are abattoirs affected? Is there a big difference in terms of their operations when it comes to FMD, if they did indeed had to slaughter animals that were infected with foot and mouth?
Remember the disease that we deal with, you always need to make sure that you protect the animals. But the main other thing is you protect people. So the Animal Disease Act protect animals, protect people, and then the industry itself. So the people side of it is, and that's where the abattoir comes in. If you put animals through an abattoir, of which foot and mouth has no effect on people, there's a certain procedure that you need to follow, not to spread the disease through the meat that might carry the virus itself. But then there's also a procedure that you need to follow to make sure that the meat is safe for people consumption. So the foot and mouth and what happened with foot and mouth has a great effect on the way that abattoirs operate to make sure that we still maintain the health status for animals, but also for people. So, and again, I think the big thing is it's added costs. And it adds up to the prevention of the disease itself and the cost effect, the negative effect it has on specifically the value chain. The same with retailers. The effort that retailers need to put into to make sure that the meat they receive, and then also what goes with it through social media and how people react to it. And I would say the confirmation that they need to put back into the market to say that the produce that we sell to you and the products that we have are safe to eat and it's for people's consumption. Do you understand? There's so much effort that needs to go in this because of the negativity of the outbreak of the disease.
Are the vaccines that are available enough currently to contain the outbreak? I know South Africa receives a bulk of the FMD vaccines from Botswana and Namibia. What more can be done as well by the country of South Africa to make sure that there's adequate and affordable supply?
So it's not the norm to go to any I will say producer of vaccines in the world to say, I want to have 14 million vaccines and can you give it in 2 weeks' time? So it is a crisis. So we went to a few countries in the world to see if people can help us with the strains and fight the strains that we have in South Africa. And I think we're in good standing. Botswana is always a big ally to us. But Botswana also has a crisis. They also need their own people and their own vaccines. So I think we've pursued many channels to open up to bring vaccines into South Africa. I think the process is just you're not going to have it in a month's time, and that's where we are. We're bringing 1 million in now. Hopefully another 850,000 and another 1.5 million maybe in the first month. But that's just in the most critical areas. But you need to vaccinate the whole herd. So another 5 million comes in, another 6 million comes in, and hopefully we're going to have the first, I would say, blanket approach where you literally vaccinate the herd in South Africa, and that's going to work. So it's a crisis. And in a crisis, it's not the norm. You need to act out of the box. You need to act with diligent concepts and put it into place, what we never utilized in the past, and of which the request for a big amount of vaccines is a big one. But what I do sense is, and that's beautiful, the moment that you open up and you literally state a national disaster, you know what's wonderful? The world wants to help. So many people want to participate and help and say, listen, can we help? Of which the vaccine makers are a great assistance to us. The ally with Botswana is fantastic, and it's a long-standing relationship that we have. Again, you need to have the numbers, and you need to bring more people in, and you need to add hours to what needs to happen. But we are confident that we're going to have enough, and we would be able to do a blanket approach, vaccination, to push down the spread of the virus.
So your message then finally, Johan, as Agri-SA, to animal producers in the country?
I think the greatest fight that we have is fear. And the moment you start losing, if you start losing part of your herd and it's crawling and it's coming next to you and the next, you know you're going to break, that fear, it feels like it numbs people. And I think the greatest message is, for so many years, we have good farmers in Southern Africa, not just South Africa. And we're going to overcome this. And where it starts is not with the government. Vaccines is ultimately a fantastic remedy for what we need to deal with now. But it starts with me as a farmer. And I think sometimes people lose so much hope and so much, they literally lose their faith that they farmed with. And if we at that stage, the virus is going to take over. So the message is we can. The message is it's a tough time. It's one of the toughest times we had, specifically in the livestock industry, and the biggest onslaught in human mankind's remembrance. However, we're going to overcome this. What's beautiful is how farmers start to claw back, and how farmers start to help each other, and how they start to do what they can do on their farms and start to work together. And start to kind of fight the virus. I think the first reaction is to fight each other and why we could not and did not. We are now so far beyond that community starts to stand up and people are fighting against this. And my message would be, we farmed for so many years, we're going to overcome this. It's tough, some people are losing a lot, but we're not going to give in. And as a community, a farming community, we're going to stand up again and conquer.
Thank you so much, Johan. We'll leave it there for today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Johan Kotze is Chief Executive Officer of Agri-SA. Agri-SA is a farmers' organization and advocacy group based with headquarters in South Africa, talking to us about foot and mouth disease and the outbreak and vaccinations needed to contain the spread. Let's get our news headlines. It's 8:31 Central African Time. Here's Jolani Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, a group of former independence fighters in Zimbabwe have filed a legal challenge against the government's plans to extend President Emmerson Mnangagwa's term in office. The National E-Hailing Federation of South Africa has called on the government to establish a task team that will probe incidents involving attacks on e-hailing drivers. This comes as concern mounts over the safety of e-hailing drivers following the killing of a driver in Pretoria. And finally, US President Donald Trump's pick for ambassador to South Africa, conservative activist and writer Leo Brent Bozal III, has arrived in the country where he will seek to improve forward ties between the two countries. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's catch you up with what's happening in the world of sports. We say good morning again to Musubudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. A very good morning indeed from the sports days. So South Africa succumbed to a 53 runs defeat against Pakistan in the third and final T20 International in Willamore in the east of Johannesburg on Monday night. Now, the host had already sealed the series, but Pakistan would have been left just wondering that they may have been able to secure the series victory after losing the first match on the last ball just last week. It was again the visitors' skipper Fatima Sana that played a heroic innings at the big end of the innings to push her team up to 144 for 7 after initially being reduced to 68 for the loss of 5 wickets. Now, Sana smashed an unbeaten 47 of 30 balls to follow up her career best 90 that she got in Potchefstroom in South Africa's Northwest Province last week as the Proteas took their foot off the pedal. Now, the lack of intensity was quite evident with the Proteas side dropping a number of catches in the outfield. The two nations will meet next in the ODI series, which begins this coming Sunday. Meanwhile, Proteas women's batting coach Bakir Abrahams has revealed that Marzan Kamp was ruled out of the rest of the T20 match against Pakistan as a precaution. This after falling ill while bowling earlier in their 53 runs loss at Willamore Park. Now, the experienced all-rounder left the field and was initially said to bat lower down the order should the need arise, but it was later announced that she would not be able to come back at all. Abraham says the decision was made in the players' best interest, with the series already secured and the match seemingly beyond their reach.
Kappie fell ill, unfortunately, during that bowling spell. And after, obviously, assessments from the medical team, they just felt where she was, they erred on the side of caution. And obviously, from a player well-being point of view, they sort of put that front and centre. Kappie was ready to play, but I just think from a medical point of view, they just felt player well-being was probably top of what was required then with the big ODI series coming up.
On to boxing news now. Tyson Fury said Anthony Joshua's tragic car accident in Nigeria that caused his 2 fatalities was the turning point for him in his decision to return to the ring. Now, Joshua, a former heavyweight champion, sustained minor injuries in the accident in December of 2025, which killed his strength as well as conditioning coach Sina Gama, as well as his trainer Latif Lats Aduele. Fury, 37 years of age, announced his return from his latest spell of retirement in January. Fury will step back into the ring on the 11th of April after a 15-month absence and will face Russian-born heavyweight Alesbak Makamudov in a bout at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which will be broadcast live on Netflix. It will be his first fight for the former 2 heavyweight champion since losing to Asanda in December of 2024.
And I suppose the biggest turning point in this comeback for me was a tragedy that happened with Anthony Joshua. I was on holiday with my family in Thailand for Christmas, just to get away from the rain. Sick of the rain, it was depressing me. And then I hear all that bad news that's gone on. And I thought, you know what? Life is very, very short and very precious and very fragile. And anything could happen at any given moment. And you should never put things off until tomorrow or next year or next week. Because tomorrow is not promised to nobody. The Bible says tomorrow is not a gift. Tomorrow ain't promised. Tomorrow is a mystery. So we have to live for today. And me living for that day, I made my mind up there and then that I'm going to come back to boxing because it's something that I love and I'm passionate about.
On to the story now. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass on Monday said Cassie Varsaman should have stepped down as the chairman of the committee organising the 2028 Olympic Games following revelations of his interactions with convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, files published by the U.S. Justice Department just last month included flirty email exchanges from more than 2 decades ago between Varsaman as well as Maxwell, the former girlfriend of late Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender. Now, Varsaman has denied having a personal or a business relationship with Epstein. He has previously apologized for his association with Maxwell, saying their relationship came before her or Epstein's crimes were revealed. The board of the LA 2028 Olympic Games just last week said Varsaman would stay on as the chairman after a review found his relationship with Epstein and Maxwell did not go beyond what had already been publicly documented. And finally, Formula One news. Barcelona will continue to host Formula One races until 2032 after striking a deal that now means it will alternate with the Belgian Grand Prix. So while the Circuit de Catalunya has been replaced as the host of the Spanish Grand Prix by Medring, it means now that on the calendar for 2026, it will hold the renamed Barcelona Catalunya Grand Prix in June. The future of the track as a Formula One circuit had been in doubt, but it will now also stage races in 2028, 2030, as well as in 2032. The races in Barcelona will be in rotation with the Grand Prix at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, which will then take place in 2026, 2027, 2029, as well as 2031. The extension also follows significant investment at the circuit in recent years. The Circuit de Catalunya Barcelona was originally built back in 1991 and also held the Spanish Grand Prix that year, with its construction being part of the development program for the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games. It's exactly 8:38 a.m. Central African time. It concludes your sports news on Africa Rise and Shine. I do return in the next hour with your On The Move team for more sporting updates. As always, for any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
So what's coming up on Rise and Shine? We talk more agricultural news, this time speaking about pork prices in South Africa. We'll touch base on that as a result of the impact of African swine fever. The prices for pork are expected to increase in the coming months. Stay tuned.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more. For 60 years, Channel Africa has connected the continent. Celebrate the journey. Celebrate the African perspective.
Let's catch you up with the world of business. Here's Nosipo Zuma to update us.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. In your business news this hour, South Africa's fragile labour market is set to come under the spotlight when the latest unemployment figures are released today. Stats SA is due to publish the results of its quarterly labour force survey for the final quarter of last year. Economists are expecting that shifts in the official unemployment rate over the last 3 months of 2025 may build on the modest positive momentum seen in the third quarter. Benguela Global Fund Manager, Senior Portfolio Manager Grant Nader says they are looking to see ongoing stability.
We'd like to see this stemming of the losses in the manufacturing sector. As the rand strengthens, it makes it cheaper to import. So we don't want to see that sector coming under too much pressure. And then we'd like to see that momentum in the hospitality and retail, on the back of good tourism, add some further jobs. So around 31.7, 31.8 would be a nice little positive surprise.
The South African Cultural Observatory, SACO, has called for informed policy decisions around the welfare of people in creative sectors. Hundreds of film and television workers marched outside Parliament last month under the banner Save SA Film Jobs to protest the declining employment and funding delays. The march highlighted the wider struggles faced by the creative community. SACO revealed that South Africa's cultural, creative and sports industry, CCINS, contributed an estimated $15.03 billion to the national economy in 2023, accounting for about 3.9% of GDP. Vonatulu Chaba is the executive director at SACO.
We need policies and investment that ensures inclusive transformation. And especially now, the world is being transformed and AI is transforming how creative and even sports are actually consuming and creating their products. So we need policies that ensure inclusive digital transformation as well, so that innovation is not just a privilege of just a few, but the right of all creative South Africans.
Zambia's mining regulator says that underground operations at Mopani Copper Mine's Mufulira mine could resume immediately after new safety measures were implemented. The Minerals Regulations Commission says it had suspended operations at the mine after it failed to comply with safety regulations, specifically the requirement to maintain an accurate system to account for all its underground workers. Mopani Copper Mine is one of the biggest copper miners in Zambia, Africa's second largest producer of the metal vital for clean energy technologies. Liberia Mines Minister says he expects the country's iron ore output to triple to around 30 million metric tons this year, driven by ArcelorMittal Liberia's planned ramp up and fresh volumes from new and revived projects. The West African nation produced about 10 million tons in 2025, almost all of it from AML, its main mining operator. Luxembourg-based ArcelorMittal is investing in expanding its Liberian operations, anchored by a new concentrator and major rail and port upgrades. The company said last month that it planned to ship 20 million tons of iron ore from Liberia in 2026 from historic levels of around 5 million tons per annum. And finally, Brent oil prices have drifted lower in Asian trade today as investors assessed risks from supply disruptions after Iran conducted naval drills near the Strait of Hormuz right ahead of nuclear talks with the U.S. later in the day. Brent crude futures were down 0.47%, or 32 US cents at $68.33 a barrel, following a 1.33% gain yesterday. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $63.51 a barrel, up 62 cents, but the move included all of yesterday's price action as the contract did not have settlement that day due to the U.S. President's day holiday. Your financial indicators: $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 352, and Botswana is 13 Pula 03. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 05, and in Zambia it's 18 kwacha 23. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 22. Russia is 76 rubles 61. India is 90 rupees 69, China at 6 yuan 91, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 15 rand 94. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,955 and platinum at $2,013 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $68.39 a barrel. Now, for any stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 8:45 Central African time. Pork prices in South Africa are expected to increase further in the coming months as the impact of African swine fever or ASF and foot and mouth disease or FMD outbreaks tighten supply across the formal market. First National Bank senior agricultural economist Paul Makube says due to the outbreak of foot and mouth disease in 2025, markets have been disrupted. He says this has resulted in a shortage of supply of all kinds of meat in the country and higher prices. Notando Magudulela reports.
FNB senior agricultural economist Paul Makube says the shortage of meat supply is continuing and meat prices have remained relatively elevated. According to Ascot, South Africa's leading antibiotic-free pork producer, the pork market is highly sensitive to even small supply disruptions. The company says South Africa slaughters roughly 72,000 pigs a week across the formal and informal sectors. The formal market has lost approximately 7,000 pigs due to the combined effect of African swine fever and foot and mouth disease outbreaks. Ascot says while this represents a relatively small percentage of total supply, even a 2% shortage can drive price increases of around 10%.
The double moeheme for the pork industry is the fact that there was an outbreak of African swine fever, which disrupts the pig market in terms of biosecurity becoming critical, and therefore disruptions to the normal operating environment. A short supply situation or a longer or sustained supply crunch will cause prices to increase and therefore remaining elevated into 2026.
Ascot says pork prices have moved significantly in recent weeks, with wholesale prices rising from about 32 Rand a kilogram to 40 Rand. It says further increases are expected as the effects of disease outbreaks work through the supply chain. Makube explains.
Currently, the pork prices are double-digit levels above the previous year. In terms of the latest inflation for January, pork ribs up 11%, pork fillet up 7%, pork chops up 13% year on year. This is an indication of the relatively elevated trend in meat prices across the board.
Notando Makutulela in Johannesburg.
Still to come, the National E-Hailing Federation of South Africa issues a call for urgent safety reforms. We'll find out why and what exactly that will entail.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Good morning starts here. Rise and shine on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Coming up after Rise and Shine on Channel Africa is On the Move, that show hosted by Benjamin Mushatama and Palisatau. And let's find out what to expect on this 17th of February. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
What's coming up?
Valentine's is over. We can move on with our lives.
Oh,
right?
you're still thinking about that? I moved on from I think at 8 p.m. on Saturday already.
You didn't participate. Did you even participate?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
I was engaged in this. It's like, I'm not coming. You tell your person, wait, we'll do it the other week, right?
Yeah.
All right. Have you seen this craze on social media where people are turning their themselves into these cartoon characters via AI?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Did you participate in that at least?
So Peter did that for me. He did one.
Okay.
And then he showed me his. And when I saw his, I thought, oh, it looks a bit more like him because the other ones I'd seen before,
yes,
they didn't look like the people.
Okay.
So then he did one for me.
And did it look like
and
you?
it looked like me, yeah.
Okay.
So
Did
he
you
helped
post
me
it?
participate.
I didn't see it on your Instagram.
No, I didn't put it on Instagram. I put it on my WhatsApp.
Ah, man, you must put it on your LinkedIn. I dare you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll think about it. Did you do it?
No, I didn't do it. But we're talking about that today because there are people that say that as much as this is a playful activity, right? You're actually giving these platforms your facial data. And there are a lot of consequences to that.
Because then they can create more of these AI characters. And you are doing some fake presentation.
But also think about
you
it.
Never did.
These days, your facial ID opens your phone. Some people use their facial IDs to open their apps.
Yeah.
So what are you actually giving away?
Yeah, you see now, I didn't think of that one, eh?
Yeah.
The security for banking one.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be dangerous, this AI thing.
I know. And we just do these things flippantly and we don't remember that actually this is our identity and it's connected to so many digital elements of our lives now since everything is now online. And our facial features are also part of that security makeup.
Yeah. So is that why you haven't done one? Because of that, those concerns?
You know what? I haven't. You know, the thing is about, I just didn't get into it. But I enjoyed watching everyone else's. I just didn't get around to doing mine.
Yeah, I'm also not a challenge person.
Yeah.
I did the 2016 look back one though.
Yeah, I saw that one, which was very nice. I love that one of yours.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We'll talk about that today and see what are we overlooking when it comes to some of these digital AI, crazes that we have on our social media platforms.
Interesting one. They're coming up on the move, so stay tuned for that after Rise and Shine.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
The National E-Hailing Federation of South Africa is calling for urgent safety reforms after recent violent attacks on drivers in the cities of Durban and Pretoria. This comes as 3 suspects linked to the murder of 22-year-old e-hailing driver Isaac David Sattler in Pretoria West abandoned their bail application on Monday and remain in custody. The Federation says fake ride requests and targeted crimes are putting drivers at risk and is urging stronger passenger verification and faster law enforcement response. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange has more on the story.
The National E-Hailing Federation of South Africa says criminal attacks on drivers are becoming more organized and require immediate intervention from both government and ride-hailing platforms. NEFSA national spokesperson Tela Masakale says fake ride requests are increasingly being used to target drivers.
Incidences involving fake ride requests and criminals targeting of drivers are a serious concern. And NEFSA has consistently advocated for stronger safeguards. We are currently pushing for measures such as verified passenger identification systems linked to Home Affairs, where passengers can be instantly verified whether they have criminal records or whether they are supposed to be legally in the country or whether they are who they claim they are. Also, stronger account authentication to verify that these passengers actually own these accounts and actually own the payment accounts linked thereof.
Masakale says a proposed rider verification systems could mirror the driver verification measures already in place.
The proposed rider verification measures such as biometrics and trigger SIMs are very practical and enforceable, similar to how driver verification systems are practical and are being currently enforced. The reason why a rider verification is not really currently a feature that is being included is because it was never really a norm for violence such as the one that persists in South Africa. Let us not forget South Africa has a very high crime rate. Therefore, the standards of practice needs to be tailored to South African norms.
The Federation is also engaging law enforcement to improve response times in high-risk areas.
As NEFSA, we recently embarked with our affiliates in the Western Cape on a safety roadshow going to each SAPS station where we've identified hotspot zones related to e-hailing incidences. We've then established a formal communication channel between BOLT, the Federation, as well as the SAPS. We would like to roll out a similar structure nationally for communication purposes for incident reporting. However, in addition to that, we strongly believe a dedicated rapid response unit would be more effective.
NEFSA says coordinated law enforcement support, verified passenger systems and rapid response units could significantly improve safety for drivers across the country. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has again expressed doubt that a deal can be reached between the US and Iran ahead of the resumption of indirect talks in Geneva today. Netanyahu said he told US President Donald Trump last week that any US deal with Iran must include the dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure, not just stopping the enrichment. Blake Sifton reports from Tel Aviv.
Iran's foreign minister has arrived in Geneva ahead of a second round of indirect talks with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner that are expected to begin on Tuesday. The talks come as the U.S. is sending a second aircraft carrier group to the Middle East as the United States continues to build up its forces in the region to put pressure on Iran. On Saturday, large protests against the Iranian government and their treatment of demonstrators were held in cities around the world, including Los Angeles, Toronto, and Munich. Those were a part of a so-called global day of action called for by the exiled son of Iran's former Shah. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a speech in which he repeated his doubts that Iran would make a deal with the United States. He said, Iran is reliable on one thing: they lie and they cheat. But Netanyahu did describe his talks that were held with President Trump last week in Washington. He said that the president believes that a deal can be reached and that he is determined to see the process through. Now, Netanyahu also went into greater detail when he described Israel's demands of these negotiations and of any deal between the United States and Iran. He said that Iran must stop all enrichment of uranium and that the equipment needed to enrich uranium in the future must be destroyed. He said that all of the highly enriched uranium that Iran possesses must also be taken out of the country. It's believed that Iran possesses more than 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium. Russia has offered to take it out of Iran in the event that a deal is reached. Netanyahu also repeated his demand that limits be placed on Iran's ballistic missile program. He said that they should be limited to a range of 300 kilometers. Of course, that's far shorter than the distance to Israel. And he also repeated the demand that Iran stop its support for proxy forces in the Middle East. Those include the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon. When it comes to the missiles, Iran has repeatedly and emphatically said that they are for defense and that they are a non-negotiable red line. Blake Sifton, SABC News, Tel Aviv.
And on that story, we end today's programming for Rise and Shine. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 6 a.m. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Asanda Beda. We hand you over to On the Move. Bye-bye from us.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Thank you so much, Asanda. And that is us now moving on to On the Move with